Us 2. Hard as my cock.
Blink once if you know when Elder Scrolls 6 is coming out, but are not going to tell me. The following is a conversation with Todd Howard, one of the greatest video game designers of all time. He has led the development of the Fallout series and the Elder Scrolls series, including Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and the future Elder Scrolls 6, and a totally new world in an upcoming game called Starfield. Many of these have won Game of the Year awards and have been some of the most celebrated and impactful games ever made. To me, Skyrim is quite possibly the greatest game ever. This is the Lex Friedman podcast. To support it, please check out our sponsors in the description. And now, dear friends, here's Todd Howard.
Я просто хочу глянуть, как тот будет здесь разговаривать. Если это будет выглядеть, как будто он пришел инвесторам что-то впаривать, то это будет неинтересно.
Possible that we are currently living inside a video game that the future you designed. Can you give hints as to how one would escape if this was a video game? How can a video game character escape to outside the video game? Are these things you don't consider when you design the game?
Actually, we do. Because in the kind of games that we make, we want it to be as open as possible. So, you know, when you start a game, you're always testing it.
Ну, в принципе, тот говорит, как в интервью, это с Обливиана. Просто чуть-чуть постарел. Это можно глянуть, на самом деле? Ну, или часть хотя бы, он, блядь, 2,5 часа идет. Вот на час, клаб. Skyrim 6. Интересно, они какие-то инструменты что там переделали для Starfield, они что-то выложат?
Ну чё, пацаны, погнали,
Спасибо.
Привет, Рич. Не хочешь сегодня в 11 заценить ивент окончания главы в Fortnite? 40 минут будет идти. Говорят, что добавит режим от первого лица. В Fortnite зоне получается.
Спасибо большое за новость. Я не знаю. Думаю, нет. Спасибо большое. Но предложение неплохое. Спасибо большое. Да нет, уже как-то во все это не хочется играть. Если мне будут платить, чтобы в это играть, может быть тогда. Вот. Ну или если моя аудитория, это ребятам, зрителям было настолько интересно, что там, не знаю, 10 тысяч подписок бы прилетало за то, что я играю в Fortnite. Всем стримерам приходит такая... нифига. То есть рекламятся через эти донаты? То есть плата моя 100 рублей. Ну, понял. $100, серьезно? Серьезно. Я даже пачку сигарет не смогу на это купить. Типа, что за хуйня? Это не реклама, окей. Давайте топ-менеджер эпиков. Evil West советую с годом в копе вообще заебись будет, там же... Ну, я посмотрел так со стороны Evil West, ну, выглядит скорее как какой-то плюс-минус... Как же они называются-то? Бля, когда куча врагов вокруг тебя, японские вот эти игры. Жанра, как его назвали-то? Ну, там не куча врагов. Короче, какой-то Monster Hunter со стороны напоминает. Но вы говорите просто слэшер. God of War копия. Блин, ну я... Короче, как объяснить? Я во все подобное играл. Просто если мне будут предлагать смотреть, ты можешь поиграть что-то типа God of War, но если там не будут интересные уровни, то я там хоть графон, хоть сюжет, мне просто типа похуй будет. DMC с пушкой. Прикол. Но визуально он меня немножечко отталкивает тем, что он такой, как будто там решейдов накинули, NB. Такой, типа, стиль Верминтайда какого-то такого. Ну, тут еще попроще. Типа вот эта контрастность очень грязно, типа, прям отталкивающее ощущение. Еще вот это типа Вест, стимпанк какой-то, вот это что-то там, короче, слегка блевать тянет. Как тебе левел дизайн в 1 и 2 Half-Life? Прикольно, хороший. Вот. Поэтому просто крипочков бегать, убивать, ну, мне не по кайфу, если честно, ребята. Уже сколько это делал? Я ебанусь. Против этих искусственного интеллекта. И если искусственный интеллект ничего интересного не может предложить. Где игры для взрослых? Ну ладно, для молодых. Где игры для молодых? Где игры для опытных ветеранов игр? Я не знаю. Где они? Для взрослых Fear and Hunger. Не, пиздец. Нет, спасибо. Я прошел вчера Callisto протокол. Я наигрался где-то на 2 часу и Activated сделал. Пробежал посмотреть, что там будет. Там ничего не было. Empire Survivors, да, конечно. Эти игры для взрослых? Ну, я покупал парочку, ничего вроде. В них долго не поиграешь просто. Так. Ну, короче, да, не, вообще, вроде норм, но просто лично мне, наверное, не очень интересно. А так игра, наверное, окей. Вот, я бы так сказал. Наверное, ок. Чё, можем посмотреть Тодда, послушать немного? Я не против. Что там первое идет? Симуляция. Игровой импотенция, но это, блядь, игры реально стали говно, с того прохожу старое, новое, приторное. Ну да, новое то, что... Короче, не тупые игры. Не тупые игры. Не тупые. Нужны не тупые игры, вот и все. Все, что нужно. В коопе вся суть, понял. Use Vibe. Я недавно на телефон скачал сапера и играл в него. Прикольно. Я уже на этой стадии, вы понимаете? Нихуя, прикольно. Да, супер крутой. Спасибо большое. Скачал сапера. Там есть версия сапера, типа под Windows визуально сделана, прикольно. Кто-то запрограммировал.
Possible that we are currently living inside a video game that the future you designed.
Да, не интересно.
Can you give hints as to how one would escape if this was a video game? How can a video game character escape?
Скорее поиск объектов поинтереснее будет, чем тривряд. Тривряд там, не знаю, я наигрался в тривряд лет 15 назад на чем-то телефоне в детском лагере, я помню, там кто-то принес. То ли это BlackBerry было, то ли еще что. Он был с этим... Бля, это какой 15 лет назад? Нет, 15, да. С этим, господи, с палкой этой для телефона. Стик, как же он... Особенное название, стилус точно, да, благодарю. Вот со стилусом, и тогда уже были вот эти кружочки, вот это все. Ну, понятное дело, что эти тривряд еще до этого были и прочее. Я тогда еще наигрался. А так, если что-то на телефоне такое играть, то, наверное, вот это типа hidden object, какая-нибудь такая фигня, что ты типа объекты выбираешь. Это поинтереснее будет. Ну, мне лично. Яндексе, да, знаю. Да, мне кажется, 2,5-часовой перевод у Яндекса придется ждать минут 20, и по итогу он выдаст ошибку, поэтому нахуй надо.
To outside the video game. Are these things you don't consider when you design the game?
Actually, we do. Because in the kind of games that we make, we want it to be as open as possible. So, you know, when you start a game, you're always...
Они уже допилили эту тему? Ну, давайте попробуем. Мне так не хочется Яндекс браузер на свой компьютер ставить, ребят. Особенно на новую систему. Все уже Ну, просто не хотелось бы в один момент, что я открою яндекс браузер, и там мне типа: добрый день, Ричард Валерьевич. Здравствуйте. Как-то так. Такое себе, ребят. Просто не логинься, ну не знаю.
Testing it. What can I do? What would the game allow me to do? And you check everything. You try to pick up the mugs. You try every door. You collide with everything. Like, hey, what are the rules of this world? We try to do games where, we say yes as much as possible. That leads to some level of chaos. But if you were stuck in a video game, you would try everything, and usually you're going to find a door or a space where the designers didn't anticipate you piling all those crates up and getting over a wall that they didn't expect.
Right, so it's not a designed doorway out. It's a accidental, unintended doorway out, and it's a happy bug.
You could trim and show. Just get in the ocean and go till it's
just keep going. Keep going.
Right.
But the more realistic the game becomes, the harder it is to find that door. The bigger the world, the bigger the open world.
And then as we do it, we learn they're going to find a way. So just don't try to pen them in. Usually we leave this developer test cell area in the game that we don't anticipate anyone will find. And they ultimately find it. It usually has crates of all the weapons in the game and things like that.
The little hints you drop now will just drive people mad, which is something I enjoy deeply. So Skyrim NPCs have at times hilarious dialogue. What does it take to build a good NPC dialogue?
The main thing is to make them reactive. A lot of times when you write characters for movies or things like that, you want to make that character interesting for themselves, right? What's their story? And there's some characters like that the player definitely cares about. But the best characters are the ones that react to you. Mm-hmm. So you'll find a lot of people love our guards, and the guards are written almost purely to be reactive. Hey, nice.
Кстати, это факт. Я сейчас Skyrim просто запустил. Мне было интересно просто ко всем подходить и смотреть, что они скажут. И они просто на меня смотрят, особенно когда ты Соника вот так на всех смотришь. Это особенно забавно выглядело. Ты просто мимо проходишь, они что-то там говорят. Какие-то фразы. Это было забавно, кстати.
Ty, I like your jacket. Do this cool watch. Hey, what'd you do? And so that, hey, you're the man as you walk by. That makes them interesting. Or the way they react to something that you do. Lydia in Skyrim, who everybody loves, I'm sworn to carry your burdens. That's a generic line that all of the, housecarls have.
Модовые ауки? Навряд ли. Проблема с модами в том, что поисковика, наверное, хорошего нет. И поэтому людям тяжело находить какие-то вещи интересные. То есть это как если бы сейчас не было поиска, не знаю, фильмов или какая-то такая фигня. Люди просто не знали, что предложить на аукционах. Какая-то такая хрень. Поэтому да, в этом вся сложность. А так в целом было забавно, я не спорю. Просто сложно людям придумать что-то.
Just kind of lands when she says it.
Why does it land? What do you did you anticipate it would land?
There's a slight snarkiness in that particular read of it, and you're asking her to do something, and she's reacting to you.
What about the trade-off between maybe the randomness and the scripted nature of the dialogue? Is there any room for randomness of the dialogue tree?
Oh, absolutely. We tend to write them in stacks with, it's a very small, think of it as a small state machine that just says, okay, this is what's happening. Here's a random list of things I could say to that. And then some of that plays out in ways you don't anticipate. But we look at the things, what are the players doing that we could have the characters respond to that they don't expect? Jumping on tables or stealing stuff or sneaking in the middle of the night or those kind of things. The more that we can do, the more reactive and interesting the characters appear.
And these state machines, how big are these things? Are these individual to the individual characters? It's just fascinating how you design state machines.
Да,
Is it just a giant
I would think of
database?
the AI as one big one. Yeah.
Oh, so
For sort of everybody.
so there's an AI.
There's
That's
a
just-
manager for all the people.
Yeah.
And one of the
It's a
things
people
that
manager. NPC manager.
right.
Nice.
One of the things that makes what we do particularly unique is, and this is a trade-off for what people are seeing, because a lot of it's not on the screen, but we're using cycles to run this, which is we're thinking about everybody in the whole world all the time. The ones that are further away at a much less tick rate, they go into low, but we know if they want to walk across the world, and we're running every quest at the same time.
Yeah.
Whereas in other open world games, you start an activity, the rest of the world's going to shut down so that they can really make that as impactful. I really prefer that the rest of it's going on. It's more of a simulation that we're building. So when those things collide, that's where it gets the most interesting. And so we're running all of those people and understanding where they want to go and their cycles and what they want to do. And the ones that are closer to you, we just update a lot more. It's one way to think about it.
I mean, that's really fascinating. That's something that people had, they were wondering about to what degree it's possible to run the world without you.
Да вроде бы он...
So there is a feeling to role-playing games that you're at the center of the world, and the whole world rotates around you, as it does in normal life. Like when we walk around, there's a... when you forget yourself, you start to take yourself very seriously, like you are the center of the world. You forget that there's 8 billion people on Earth, and you forget that they have lives. That's actually a sobering realization, that they all have really interesting life stories, and they have their worries. They suffer in different, complicated ways. And yet, when you play a role-playing game, there's both computationally and
сейчас скажу, как называется. Return YouTube dislike расширение.
Storytelling perspective, you wonder if the world goes on without you. Like if you come back, if you take a break and you come back, is there still a bustling town that now has a history since you have last visited? So to what degree can you create a world that goes on without you, or goes on at the same time as you do your thing, whatever the heck you're doing?
We don't prioritize the stuff you can't see, so it's more like an amusement park. If you study like the design, our level designers did this, how do they build Disney World in these places? So it still exists for you, the player. So it is fairly, when you're going to come in, this is what you're going to see. The shops are in the front. You're going to do this. It's just for us to make it far more believable and get some more emergent behavior that not just make it sort of the verisimilitude of what you're in for that moment, but you buy it all. I always say, like, we got to do the little things so that you buy the reality of the virtual world you're in. So we want to do something crazy, when a dragon lands or a deathclaw comes out of the wasteland or those kind of things that it has the impact to you as the viewer that it would to the people in the world.
Okay. But still, you are simulating stuff that's close to you. It is a bit of a simulation going on.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
And so that creates some interesting dynamics then.
And the stuff that we're looking at in the future, our plan is to push that even more, to think about how these things exist in the world first. And we do some of this, but even more so in the future to say, how do these things exist? Take like a faction in the world. What is their role in the world? As opposed to just their role is for the player to join it, go through a bunch of quests and become the head of the faction. Think a little bit deeper about the simulation and what would the Mages Guild be doing in a fantasy world, or the Fighters Guild be doing in a fantasy world, versus just sign up, do quests, get gold.
And so that when you show up to that Mages Guild, it's a bustling guild full of stuff going on.
It's not just that it's bustling, it's that they feel rooted in it. They don't feel like a storefront for come here, do quests, get experience.
Is that one of the essential components of randomly generated worlds? So when I think back to Daggerfall as a gigantic world, or when I first played it, I thought like...
Добрый день, Ричард и чатик. Как ты думаешь, сейчас лучшее время для апгрейда ПК, имея в виду по цене, или ждать еще, пока крипто совсем обвалится?
Я не шарю, спасибо большое. Ну, вроде сейчас цены окей. То есть вроде бы уже крипте это цены не подвязаны, если не ошибаюсь. Ну, сейчас не выгодно просто сидеть, типа, фармить там на одной видеокарте. Просто непонятно, если ты говоришь, типа, видеокарту, например, типа, что сейчас выбирать, NVIDIA или AMD, опять же. Тут вопрос. Ну, AMD вроде как, видимо, у них появились специалисты, которые даже что-то программируют. Он там OpenGL. Я так и не понял, они апдейт выпустили на все, что связано с OpenGL? Теперь у них нормально работает, или только на Minecraft они выпускали? Я не помню. Я не понял даже, скорее. Вот. А так, да, наверное, сейчас, по сути, нужно смотреть просто на то, что то, у чего хорошие отзывы и по цене, типа, ну, не самое дешевое, но одно из дешевых, это в основном AMD. Вот, наверное, так. А так, да, наверное, можно, почему бы нет. OpenGL в 2022. Не, ну да, в идеале должно сейчас, если это Windows, должно хорошо быть написано на условном каком-нибудь DirectX 12. В идеале. Но не все могут с этим справиться. Поэтому, скорее всего, это будет какой-нибудь OpenGL билды. Ну или на Директе 11, окей. 2.0 еще со времен 2009. Без знания дела. Не, я подумал, может быть, сейчас тот будет звучать, типа, как будто он на The Game Awards рассказывает, там, типа, насколько все пиздато. Не, ну, звучит так, как будто тот шарит, по словам, которые, по крайней мере, его слышу. То есть нет чего-то такого некорпоративного или, типа, мол, не знаю, чел там сидит на своей позиции, там, высокой и все, и сидит дрочит. Вроде нет такого. Вопрос в том, будет ли раскочегариться как-то этот подкаст или нет?
I mean, you're just struck by the immensity of it.
Right.
The immensity of the possibility. When you're young and you look into your future, it's wide open, and you can do anything. And that's what Daggerfall felt like. The openness was gigantic.
And Daggerfall is interesting coming off Arena, where Arena does the same thing, but Daggerfall in many ways is bigger.
Ну, я так скажу. Просто, в принципе, он, если... Когда речь заходит про, типа, вот эти миры, там, большие карты и так далее, у них реально получается чуть ли, наверное, не единственных что-то интересное выдавать, что это игра, которая, типа, что это симуляция какая-то, которая что-то генерирует, а не просто кино, на большом поле, какая-нибудь такая хрень. Вот. Я не думаю, что кто-то подобное еще делает, кроме Bethesda сейчас. Да, есть вопросы к Fallout 4 в плане, например, сюжета, допустим. Не помню, что там по квестам точно. Но я помню, что Fallout 4 кайфово было играть. 76 Fallout, я не знаю, в чем прикол был, но не суть. Так что ждем, что они по Старфилду сделают. Dark Reader прятал кнопки. Вот он что.
Focusing
разобрался.
On an area because of how the density of this is how much physical game space we'll do for these villages and towns, and it does feel endless.
Типа Зельда, там у Зельды прикольно. У Зельды там скорее прикольно с твоим вниманием играются на этом поле, что, мол, твое внимание там зацепила какая-то, не знаю, типа аванпост из этих челов, и там сундучок, ты его берешь, Ты встал на какую-то платформу, и тут же ты видишь какую-то другую фигню, там, не знаю, репку какую-то вытащить, какая-нибудь такая хрень. Ты что-то бежишь, появляется какая-то жучок, ты за ним бежишь, и ты уже не понял, но ты оказался как-то на севере карты. Какая-то такая хрень, ты такой, нихуя. И там вот прикольно перетекается, очень круто сделано, никто так, я не помню, чтобы кто-то так делал, что вот как-то ты без, типа, журнала заданий просто, типа, бегаешь постоянно, вот, и перетекаешь из одной локации в другую. Но у Зельды в плане симуляции там прикольно, что делается, это, наверное, с физикой связано, то, как ты можешь комбинировать свои способности, возможно. Но я бы не сказал, что там какие-то противники такие интересные, что, типа, мне лично скучно быстро стало, а сами уровни эти подземные, ну, эти, господи, данжи, они мне показались слабыми. Там вроде бы данжи интересные становятся то ли под конец, точнее, то ли в DLC, если не ошибаюсь. Там вроде данжи уже интересные сделаны. Ну, такие, не тупые. Просто в начале они были туповатые. Ну, прям, не в смысле детские, а просто ну, какие-то глуповатые, туповатые. Ну, мне так показалось. Может быть, просто я просто уже их хорошо, типа, решаю. Может быть, поэтому так показалось. Там, да, там много данжей, которые, типа, ну, ни о чем. А раньше в Зельде, ну, или в старой 2D Зельде какой-нибудь, Link to the Past, там данжи большие, это такие сегменты, их там просто несколько, но они очень интересно, прикольно сделаны, прикольно в них бегать. А в Breath of the Wild они решили, типа, все это разделить на, там, 1000 этих данжей, сделать их мелкими и разбросать по большой карте. Ну, хуй знает. Им просто нужно было больше времени, чтобы сделать их интересными. И был ли в этом смысл, не знаю.
Even though you're looking at a map that has constraints. And
Ну, там есть,
Daggerfall
типа,
actually
некоторые
was a
прикольные. Я не
touchstone
говорю,
for
что все
us
там такие.
going into Starfield for how we do the planets, because there's a different kind of gameplay experience when you just wander outside a city in Daggerfall than, you know, follow a quest line and go to this place, and it's completely handcrafted, and everything around every corner we've kind of...
Да, это рассказал. Ну, Муравьинд очень... Вот просто я его где год назад запускал или 2 года назад. Он, блядь, я не знаю, ну, мне лично очень скучно было в него играть. Он реально был какой-то там много всякой фигни, то ли от Dungeons Dragons, то ли еще что осталось, которое не очень-то как-то, как мне показалось, канает с тем, что было в игре. Ну, то есть не очень совмещалось. Ну и сама боевка вот эта. Какая-то вот такая вот смешная была. Короче, нахуй это все нужно было, если по итогу ты там что-то тыкаешь. Но, короче, если они будут делать нового The Elder Scrolls, им точно нужно хорошо подумать о том, как ты взаимодействуешь там с врагами и прочее, потому что боевка даже в том же Скайриме, ну, не знаю. Ну, вот это Oblivion, Skyrim, то, что они сделали. Оно окей получше, но скорее вот то, как было в Oblivion, окей было. А в Скайриме они сделали, по сути, то же самое. И как-то не развили идею этой боевки, которую они сделали. И оно просто, ну, скучно. Быстро становится. Муравьинд последняя нормальная игра в серии. Ну, не знаю.
kind of place like Skyrim.
Он просто
You know,
старый.
Starfield's a bit more like Daggerfall, and if you wander outside the city, we're going to be generating things, and you kind of get used to that game flow, different than we've done before, and fun in a different kind of way.
We'll talk about Starfield. So, just for people who don't know, and how dare you for not knowing, but with Daggerfall, we're talking about the Elder Scrolls series that started. So, we're talking about the big title.
Скорее, tu кучу раз пытался пройти. Да, я постоянно тоже дропаю его. Не знаю, не могу. Не могу. Вот. Fallout 4 поинтереснее, намного. То есть Fallout 4 это сейчас у них вышка. Сюжет это, бля, вообще, да, я не спорю. То, что они сделали с... Ой, блядь, с этими ответами, это не лучшее решение было. Я понял идею, которую пытался там тот рассказывал про эти диалоги, вроде бы как-то где-то в интервью, что ли. Я понял идею, но мне кажется, реализация была очень слабой, и сам сюжет. Типа, как идея того, что, окей, ты ищешь, типа, сына или там дочь, или кто был, прикольная. Но то, что вот вокруг это завязано было, ну, такое себе. Тупо сэндбокс. Ну, наверное, не знаю. Мне кажется, у Скарима то, какая игра, то какой Скарим, мне кажется, у него чересчур большая карта. То есть как будто бессмысленно большая. Все просто кажется одинаковым, не знаю. Типа, в чем смысл тогда? Там высотки и так далее, до этого было. Не, Fallout 4 по левел дизайну, по боевке, как там проходишь, двигаешься из квеста в квесты какие-то переходишь. Очень прикольно, очень круто. Если они продолжат дальше, поработать там над ошибкой, связанной с сюжетом, в Старфилде, должно быть интересно получиться, мы посмотрим. Но если это, блядь, будет No Man's Sky, сука, ну я сомневаюсь.
Within the series started with Arena in 94, Daggerfall in 96. I didn't look up the years before this. This is depressing or awesome.
Да, есть такое ощущение.
So all of these games brought hundreds, probably for some of them thousands of hours of joy for me. So Arena, Daggerfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. So I don't remember Arena being that open world.
Well, it's all the provinces. It follows kind of the same pattern. It just doesn't have all the number of villages and places that Daggerfall has, while Daggerfall focuses on the Iliac Bay area.
Как тебе Нью-Вегас? Мне кажется, Нью-Вегасе просто нечем заниматься. То есть я, честно, сколько раз я, блядь, в него играл, я так и не допроходил. То есть Нью-Вегас мне вот чем-то по тому, как ты там ходишь, бегаешь, вот Skyrim очень напоминает. Поэтому Fallout 76... Я не знаю, чем Fallout 76. Я не знаю, что они пытались сделать этим. Бесполезных квестов, которые генерируются постоянно. Интересно, будет ли вырезать...
Arena does it all. It just changes the scale in terms of, one block on the map equals this much space.
There is something that, I mean, I'm speaking to anecdotal experience, but I just remember it feeling wide open, Daggerfall.
It definitely was, yes.
In the way Arena didn't.
Здесь в Вегасе может
I
зачем...
don't remember.
Ну, я помню, да, там как-то... Не, да,
because
это
Arena,
факт. Геймплей, но получше, конечно, скорее.
It was so cool to have just the role-playing game aspect. You were focused on the items and the character development.
Daggerfall has a lot more depth, particularly in the character system. That's what it introduces, all of the skills and those kind of things. Arena, it's a game I love. And it's very, very elegant.
Ну да, я вспомнил, как я отыгрывал последний раз на стриме Нью-Вегас, какого-то сумасшедшего играл, который типа бегает и всех режет. Меня закидывают говном и прочее, я ко всем подбегаю, всех это зарезаю, какая-то такая херня, я кидаю гранатами максимум, что такое я делал. И типа... И выглядело, да, жутковато и прочее, но интересно. То есть, это ролл-плей, короче, был хоть какой-то. Вот, и... да, чтобы в Скариме такое делать. Ну, в Скариме можно лук взять, например. Или магию. Или меч. Да, наверное, это все.
The first one, where it's just an XP-based system, do this, get XP, level up. Very classic role-playing game. Daggerfall digs deep into who's your character, how you're going to develop it, what are your skills, there's advantages, there's disadvantages. And the environment going full 3D from Arena, which is actually a 2.5D Doom-style engine. That I agree with you that Daggerfall feels like there's more possibilities when you're playing it.
Were you able to look up at the sky in Daggerfall?
Yep.
My memory
is full 3D. Yeah.
So that's what full 3D means, and then you can go outside the city.
You can walk outside the city. You can do that in Arena too, but it looks more fakey, right? It's all going to be a flat plane. Here comes things, and then a dungeon entrance is a 8-bit. Here comes a little flat coming at the camera.
So before we go to the end, in the middle, so from Starfield to Fallout and the Elder Scrolls series, let's go to the very beginning. What's the origin story? You know what? Let's even go before
Я
that.
надеюсь, для
What's the
Старфилда они
first
новый
time
движок написали.
you remember
Новый
the thing that
инструмент.
made you fall in love with video games?
Well, I
Нет?
think it's partly, my age coming up with the arcades and playing, Space Invaders at the pizza place, and then Pac-Man really... It's interesting about video games and what Pac-Man did for video games. Were popular.
Просто их эдитор, их этот эдитор, Creation Kit или что там, он, пиздец, он неудобный, он устаревший. Creation Engine 2 послал то. Окей, я надеюсь, что просто там была возможность, типа, выкинуть все то, что такое себе, и, типа, переписать и сделать. Окей, не с нуля, но то, что будет эффективнее просто-напросто, вот и все. Вот, в плане и инструменты для квестов. Не, они прикольные у них там, то, как они сделали инструменты для квестов, но очень... не комплексно, запутано, очень запутано, пиздец. Вот я представляю, как вот ты приходишь в Bethesda работать и садишься за эти инструменты, такой... наверное, если бы чуть подольше времени уделил Creation Kit'у, было бы попроще, в принципе. Ты знаешь, что нажимать. Типа... как работать с этими инструментами, но они выглядели супер неудобно.
Them in a way
Я,
that
кстати,
was
смотрел Карм.
just insane at the time. Had a song, had a cartoon, had all of the things. Nintendo comes along, so it was always part of. I think if you were a kid growing up then, it was such a
апгрейд,
newness
окей. Я надеюсь, они
to
апгрейднули
playing
нормально.
things like that. I remember being in 5th grade when the TRS-80 was brought into the
Сразу
classroom.
прошарили?
There was a Star Trek game, and I was enamored with it, and they were going to start teaching some rudimentary programming.
Стрельбу в
Okay, would you like to know how this is made? And I was,
думаю, что
I was
все
hooked.
просто было.
It's like, I need to figure out how to make this stuff. And so I was a self-taught programmer, and my whole goal was to write my own video games. And by 6th, 7th grade, I had written my own much better Star Trek clone.
Это изначально геймбрил движок для ММО по королю Артура. Нихуя себе.
And I really enjoyed programming on the Apple II then. And that, I think, was the right level of, complexity.
Да,
At that age, where you could you were always learning, but you could still understand a lot of the problem set for, this is when I get on the screen. And I was also into art. So I did a lot of art, and I did a lot of programming, and I was always making games. That was my hobby from the...
Спасибо большое. Спасибо большое. ТикТок. Вы не увидели фразу в начале, ребят. Уже перезапустить. Можно перезапустить. How NPCs die in Skyrim. И звук. Да, что-то там хавок взяли, вот, что-то там...
The time I was, 10 or 12.
What was to you involved in making...
Че, немного пропустил, прослушал.
We're always learning, but you could still understand a lot of the problem set for, this is when I get on the screen. And I was also into art, so I did a lot of art. And I was the right lady for my own video game. Self-taught to figure out how to make this is made. Start teaching, and then part of the way about that age coming up with the arcades and playing, Space Invaders at the
with video games. You remember the thing that made you fall in love with video games?
Well, I think it's partly, my age coming up with the arcades and playing,
Ну, насколько я понял, типа, разбираться с коллизиями физикой не то чтобы сложно, просто система, которую ты строишь, она достаточно комплексной по итогу будет, и тебе нужно просто уметь итерировать очень быстро между вот кучей объектов и всяких разных задач. Вот эти все проверки, типа, коллизится, не коллизится, что будет, если они будут стакаться. Там куча просто разных проблем, и там в основном... Короче, когда дело будет касаться физического движка, там больше про то, как построить так систему и понять, чтобы она просто вот быстро все проверяла вот, в реальном времени.
You know, Space Invaders at the pizza place, and then Pac-Man.
Не видел.
Really, it's interesting about video games and what Pac-Man did for video games, where it popularized them in a way that was just insane at the time. Had a song, had a cartoon, had all of the things. Nintendo comes along. So it was always part of, you know, I think if you were a kid growing up then, it was such a newness to playing things like that. I remember being in 5th grade when the TRS-80 was brought into the classroom and there was a Star Trek game. And I was enamored with it.
Не, ну чел реально доделал проекты.
Rudimentary programming. Like, okay, would you like to know how this is made? And I was hooked. It's like, I need to figure out how to make this stuff. And so I was a, self-taught programmer, and my whole goal was to write my own video games. And, by 6th, 7th grade, I had written my own much better Star Trek clone for the Apple II. I really enjoyed programming on the Apple II then. And that, I think, was the right level of, like, complexity, at that age, where you could you were always learning, but you could still understand a lot of the problem set for, like, this is when I get on the screen. And I was also into art. So I did a lot of art, and I did a lot of programming, and I was always making games. That was my hobby from the time I was, 10 or 12.
What was to you involved in making games? Like, how did you think of it? Was it from a graphics perspective, like what shows up on screen? Was it how it makes you feel? Was it about the story? Was it the text-based stuff and the dialogue and the prompting? Like, what does it mean to create a video game at that young age to you?
Well, it was a way of experiencing things that I couldn't myself. So, if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons at the time too, where you really feel, even pen and paper, these are like they feel somewhat, in quotes, real to you as you're playing them. You're very invested in your character and what you're doing. And then I loved the games, the Wizardry and Ultima, that were able to bring that to a computer so I could, do it on my own time. It was very, very real to me. I'd sit in my bedroom and then go to bed and think about it, and then, I have to go to school. I want to come home and figure out how to do this problem in the game. And so whatever I was creating was something that I was excited about at the time. I made a Raiders of the Lost Ark game.
Like with graphics and everything?
Yeah, it was usually, made a Miami Vice game, made a Brew the Wanderer game, made a Traveler game. But every time I was doing it, I wanted to figure out a new method on the Apple II of pulling it off graphically, whether that was editing character sets to get graphics in different formats, or how can I enable the secret double high-res mode it had, or just things like that, where it became kind of this limitless, what can I make this do? And I had some friends who were doing the same thing, and then you get into who can impress each other. And I was kind of middle of the pack, I would say. But again, this was the time where they're bringing computers into the school.
Блин, чё в те времена у детей, короче, вот были вот эти компьютеры, и все просто, такое ощущение, просто все научились программировать вот так сходу. А чё там... То есть там настолько, типа, все просто, что ли, было, что столько вот такое поколение людей заинтересовалось программированием и развилось как программисты? Я сейчас даже не могу представить себе, как это вообще. Простой язык был. Простой Basic, Делать больше нехуй.
Teachers are learning it because they have to teach the students. But then I would say I was part of a group of students that were like way past that. And it was very much of a self-taught, how do you make this thing dance?
I'd like to ask a strange question. So at that time,
Детали...
a lot of people consider you one of, if not the
Количество пикселей даже
greatest
можно было
game
посчитать,
designer
наверное,
creator of all time. You were middle of the pack then.
удержать...
Did you have a sense that this would be
Точнее,
your life,
неправильно сказал,
and
типа
you would
память,
also
которая
be
была в компьютере, можно
creating,
было в уме,
the
наверное, держать?
greatest games ever?
Not in the slightest. No, I don't think anybody. But I was very much like that was my dream at that age. But you don't think that that's a job.
Учились.
And as I got older, I was really going through college, even the computer classes then weren't where I wanted them to be, so I was still kind of doing my own stuff. And I ended up getting a business degree and then interviewing for some jobs, like finance jobs. So, well, I guess I should do this to make money, and I can keep doing this on the side. And I remember I actually got to like the final level of like this corporate finance job at Circuit City.
Nice.
And they turned me down. And I was like, fuck them. I'm just going to go make video games. So thank you, Circuit City.
Yeah, I remember Circuit City. I think they went bankrupt, actually.
Well, they were based in
F-word.
Richmond. I was going to
Что?
school close to there.
So what's the origin story of you joining?
Так.
Bethesda Softworks at the time.
So I had
Bethesda.
gotten Wayne Gretzky Hockey 3 for Christmas from my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife. I was in college, and I noticed that it was, in Rockville, Maryland, and that's on my way home over Christmas break back to William & Mary, where I went to college. And I was at this point committed, like, this is what I want to do. So I'm just going to drive by and knock on the door, which is what I did. So I drove by and knocked on the door. It was Martin Luther King Day, 93. And someone came out and met me and said, well, maybe, and I said, well, I'm in college. I'm talking about when I'm out of school. I'm like, well, okay, well, contact us then. And...
А чё, да, можно было так на работу прийти, просто в дверь постучаться? Тодд Говард, смотрю на Тодда, вспоминаю этот видос по поводу романтить собаку в Fallout 76. Что?
Привет, Тодд. Здрасте, Тодд. Всех игроков интересует вопрос, можно ли будет романсить пса? Я вам уже говорил, что деревья будут расти в реальном времени, а мельницы могут возгораться от огнемета. Тодд. Вопрос был, а еще можно будет летать на вертиберде и стрелять из пистолета? Вы такого еще не видели? Вот. Нет, я спросил про О. Кстати, вы знаете, что теперь вместо скиллов будут игральные карты? Колоду выбираете в начале игры и вместо боев играете с врагами в покер теми картами, которые у вас есть. То ответьте, можно ли будет романсить пса? До свидания, Тодд.
Ну да, это же Fallout 4, типа пес, все дела. Окей, понял. Схуяли было. Так, там непонятно, разве тот... У них же там, блядь, компания, у них ZeniMax и Bethesda, типа, а что он управляет? То есть он как бы был тем человеком, который следил за этим. Не, все, что под Bethesda, типа, уходило как издание, это пиздец, да. Там куча вопросов к решениям. Но есть вероятность, что... Я просто не знаю, занимался ли он издательской деятельностью, или он просто Bethesda Studios конкретно. Типа, они там сидят, дрочат Fallout, Elder Scrolls и так далее. Вот. Там же у них какие-то несколько компаний, кто дочка кого-то, я так не разобрался. Они продались с ZeniMax под конец разработки Моры, почти все дерьмо от них шло. Ну, его повысили, получается, Тодда, вроде бы, после Муравьинда тогда. Выходит.
I will say I would contact them every once in a while. I did work for a small software company right out of school.
Это не издательское,
I did work for a small software company right then.
А он уже был гейм-директором Муравьинда? Окей,
every once in a while.
Фига.
I did work for a small software company right out of school down in that area of Williamsburg. And still would contact Bethesda. Arena had just come out. So then we're in 94. Arena had just come out, and I loved it. So I was into sports games. I like the hockey stuff. They were doing they did a basketball game.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, they did like 6 sports games, 6. Bethesda released 10 games, yeah. 6 of them sports games. And...
Говорящая голова... Ну, пока что в интервью он не так звучит, просто непонятно, насколько... Короче, люди, которые известны, они, возможно, приписывают себе вещи, которые они не делали. И типа, насколько он приписывает себе, вот тут не ясно. Вот.
NCAA basketball, Hockey League Simulator.
Yeah. So it was really like sports gridiron, which is like the first kind of physics-based football game at the time. And there's a famous story with Electronic Arts trying to do Madden and then hiring Bethesda before my time to make Madden because they were struggling. And when I started at Bethesda, I remember the owner had John Madden's Oakland Raiders playbook in his office. Like, can I see that? And I love sports, right? So I still play Madden to this day. I love it.
So there's an alternate reality where
I made sports games?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to make like the ultimate college football game. Well, it's always like, it's like music. You probably listen to lots of type of music. Like, you don't play every type.
But I think of open worlds as fundamentally different.
Well, sure.
No, like source of happiness, entertainment, storytelling, world, gaming than Madden. I mean, it just, because I love both. I love both worlds, but...
They're two totally different experiences. Just like when you might watch a movie, you might be in the mood for Lord of the Rings one day, and then you want some other, I don't know, competitive show or game show or something like that. Or watch football on TV, right? You watch football on TV, but then I want to get really into Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
So I think all those things have validity. And actually one of the first things I worked on when I started at Bethesda was NCAA basketball, Road to the Final Four 2. So that was kind of an external project. Came in like, hey, you know sports, get this game done. And then went on to, but they were doing everything I loved. It was like, this is where I have to work. They're doing like the Terminator science fiction stuff. I love that. They're doing these open world role-playing games. Like, I love that. And they're doing sports. Like this, I have to work here. So
and
started there. And
you loved.
I loved it. Yeah. So when I came in, it had just come out and they were doing the CD-ROM version. So CD-ROMs aren't even out yet.
Тут немного раскочегарился вроде бы.
Oh, it used to be floppy disks. That's probably one of... What was Arena
We would burn them in the basement. We had the disc replicators.
Right. So Arena was not released on floppy.
It was. Yeah, I believe it's 6 floppy disks.
6 floppy disks.
Maybe it was 8.
Yeah.
But in those days, the number of floppy disks was very, very important to what the money you were making. So, if you wanted to do a big, huge game, like, well, that's just too many disks. So the CD-ROM became this jumping off point for the whole industry where, it's unlimited data.
By the way, I played Arena.
Unlimited. Нет, наверное, в те времена это пиздец.
So that was, of course, attained legally, as one does.
Alternate means?
by alternate means,
Right.
On floppy disks, and that was such an incredible, as you probably have seen, interacting with a large number of people. It's a whole world. It's a world that you escape to in the way, like your favorite book, like Lord of the Rings. It was unlike anything else. It was incredible. It's probably, I mean, of course, as people say, it's the first game you play is the most...
ТГА вроде бы 8-го, нет? Оно вроде бы...
is the one that really sentimentally means the most to you. That's, I think, the first role-playing game I played, and it was just changed everything.
Ну, где-то в этих числах.
It was Arena,
А,
yeah.
значит, okay.
I think Daggerfall is what I really kind of really played. Especially because, like you said, the character development was really rich, but just like that you can feel like you travel to this whole other world that's less about entertainment, like a shooting game,
Right.
and more about a world. It felt like it's a world, like you're literally there. You can travel there. You can live there. You actually feel like that person versus like a Pac-Man, like an arcade, fun, entertaining adventure game.
Вырождение, там Фарго был, типа.
So you joined.
Вырождение там 2 было или что-то такое.
You made it. What did you work on first?
Она сама особо не в курсах была, но ее порекомендовали, она сказала, окей, я возьму, типа,
So I worked on the basketball game really just to get it out the door. And Terminator Future Shock. So we were doing Future Shock and Daggerfall at the same time. They were developing a new engine. So it was one of the first 3D engines, the X engine. So we were doing Future Shock and Daggerfall at the same time.
Future Shock.
They were developing a new engine. So it was one of the first 3D engines, the X engine. There were a bunch of guys from Denmark, actually. There's like a big Danish demo scene in those days in the PC.
Cool.
And so a bunch of the top programmers there. Well, look, this is not big. This is not a big company. Maybe there's 20 people in development. And we were doing both Daggerfall and the new Terminator. And so Daggerfall was a bit more, again, behind the Terminator game. So I was...
Я, короче, прошел, по сути, Fallout 2. У меня баг был в конце. Там нужно было отправиться на нефтяную вышку. И, типа, ты должен был нажать «Полетели». Я нажимал, она не работала, кнопка. Так что я прошел, ну, почти. Вот, к сожалению. Но, получается, не прошел.
One of the main people on the Terminator team. And I don't know, things kind of worked out. I very quickly, I don't know why. Like, I quickly became the producer, and I don't know. So, and we were doing both Daggerfall and the new Terminator. And so Daggerfall was a bit more, again, behind the Terminator game. So I was one of the main people on the Terminator team. And I don't know, things kind of worked out. I very quickly, I don't know why. Like, I quickly became the producer, and I was making levels and doing all these things, and it was awesome.
Ну вот, видите, что вы... Типа он стал продюсером и делал уровни. Короче, тогда как-то задачи попроще перераспределялись, люди всегда были чем-то заняты. Сейчас, конечно, вопрос, чем будет
looking
продюсер
back now, I
заниматься.
can understand it better. But at the time, I didn't appreciate it, which is no one quite owned the Terminator license. It was in like this limbo, legally. So there was no one to tell us what to, like, no, you can't do that. So we would, pick apart the movies and, how does he mention the gun he wants and the wattage of the laser and all these things. And so Future Shock is a game that I still love today. It does a lot of things that if you go back and look at it, we're frankly still doing. Like, it's a large open world post-apocalyptic landscape height map with instanced objects all over it, and that is still a lot of how we build our worlds.
What's an instanced object?
It's some games, every wall or building is kind of unique in its data, whereas we would just build these little husks of buildings and then place them all over the place. So the memory and the way you render it is much more optimal.
So that allows you to build a bigger world.
It allows you to build a bigger world much faster and not, not every single version of that building isn't its own unique architecture that is going to take up memory and processing speed, et cetera, et cetera.
So you're there very much feeling the computational constraints of the system when you're creating these open worlds.
And you know what? That's the thing then. You see some of it now, but in those times, I do feel like every year the technology moved. And maybe it's because, same thing, we're like that my age at that time, where every year somebody was coming up with some new method or some new game system. And it was every year that innovation. And then, 3D acceleration comes along. And then these things come along. And then HD comes along. And it is true that as time goes on, there is visually a diminishing return in terms of what you're able to do on the screen. And there's a ton of work that goes into it now, because just rendering this cup to the perfect shine and material and roughness, and how does the global illumination off this wall, it's a ton of work. But you can pretty much do what you want now if you want to put the time in. Whereas then, okay, you can't do everything you want. So pick your battles really carefully, and technically you couldn't do what you want, if that makes sense.
How much trade-off is there now in how much effort you put into the realism of the graphics versus the story? And actually not even how much effort you put in, but is there a trade-off in the experience, the feel of the game, in terms of realism and story?
Usually we will start with let the player have a...
Это чат вам нормально? Я могу, в принципе, окей, я поставлю яндекс браузер, могу перевести, если вам удобно будет. Но, наверное, не будет слышно особо Тодда, вот это все. Okay.
As much agency and do as many things as they can as possible. And we will sacrifice some graphic fidelity for that, some speed for that. We could make a game that, traditionally our games are, we okay with 30 frames a second as long as it looks really good and the simulation's running and all of those things. So we'll sacrifice some of that fidelity for the player experience in the kind of things that I do. But from like a manpower standpoint, the graphics programmers work on graphics, the artists work on art, and we have a awesome team of artists and designers and writers and programmers. It's usually where we find, as time goes on, the amount of art time that it takes to create a cup compared to what it used to be, that has increased. So we do use, like most people use, art outsourcing as well, so that we still relatively, compared to our industry and what we're doing, have smaller teams.
What about the experience of the beauty of the graphics? So like one of the most amazing things about Skyrim, and maybe you could say that about some of the other games, but for me Skyrim is the outdoor, when you step outside.
Да, я скачал Godot посмотреть, что тут можно поделать, и как вообще процесс выглядит. По приколу.
Yeah.
The outdoor scenery. So what does it take to create the feeling, especially of that, being outdoors, of nature? And maybe you could say that about most.
We're doing.
Ну, он упомянул по поводу того, что ассеты...
The graphics programmers work on graphics, the artists work on art. From like a manpower standpoint, the kind of things that I do for the player experience, in the kind of things that I do. Good in the simulation. Traditionally our games are, we okay with 30 frames a second as long as it looks really good and the simulation's running and all of those things. So we'll sacrifice some of that fidelity for the player experience in the kind of things that I do. But from like a manpower standpoint, the graphics programmers work on graphics, the artists work on art, and we have a awesome team of artists and designers and writers and programmers. It's usually where we find, as time goes on, the amount of art time that it takes to create a cup compared to what it used to be, that has increased. So we do use, like most people use, art outsourcing as well, so that
я понял, да, материалы.
Still relatively, compared to our industry and what we're doing, have smaller teams.
Не, я слушаю.
What about the experience
Иногда поглядываю,
of the beauty of the graphics? So like one of the most
Или читаю. Я, честно, не
amazing
замечаю.
things about Skyrim,
Вроде бы читаю.
and maybe you could
но
say
при
that
этом
about some
слушаю.
of the other games, but for me, Skyrim is the outdoor. When you step outside,
Yeah.
it's the outdoor scenery. So what does it
Ну
take
да,
to
мне
create
интересно стало,
the
как в Годоте
feeling,
работать. Может, там
especially of
по
that,
итогу окей будет.
being outdoors, of nature, and just like
Весело.
lost in the beauty, whatever it
Да,
is when you go
сомневаюсь.
hiking and you feel the awe of it. How do you create that awe? Is that graphics? What is that?
It's a lot of graphics. It's a lot of mood. We just like, talk about it in terms of tone. And those are, again, going back to my previous comment, the graphics are very, very important to us because, and we always push them, because when you're doing the kind of things we do where you step into a virtual world, it does have to have that moment of, wow, this feels real. I've never experienced this. And it's okay. I think it's okay to let just like the time settle. Meaning you step out, just how does the wind sound? How are the trees moving? How are the clouds moving? I enjoy strolling and
Разраба
watching
Ведьмака.
the sunset.
Да не, он вполне себе
How does it land
супер
over the
выглядит
water?
на 51
Like,
год.
it doesn't have to be like, hey, let's go, let's finish a quest, let's go kill things, let's figure out the next step, let's level up. Like, I like the quiet moments a lot, and I think when you play our games, you can tell we spend a lot of time on them. Then you watch like the weather roll in. I think that's just part of being that character, being that person in that space.
Yeah,
So
I saw that
good.
there's a mod that removes all enemies. I've been meaning to do that, to just do like a live stream where for hours walk around Skyrim, and then answer questions and so on. That just feels
На самом памяти
that's a
освобождает.
completely
Ага.
stress-free environment. It's just you are, just like you said, in this moment in time. And it's so incredible. It feels as incredible as going hiking or something like that, but in a totally different place, like Iceland or something like that. This whole other surreal, ethereal place. It's it's incredible how you kind of create that. So graphics is a part of that, but also letting it the temporal aspect of that, like the wind, the rustling sound and look and all of that.
The soundscape is really, really important. And the sky, we spend a lot of time on the sky because it's taking up much
Звуковой
more of the
ландшафт,
screen
soundscape,
than
так перевел.
a lot of people give credit for.
What about the rendering, the openness of it? Like, how do you? Is
There's a lot of level of detail, streaming work, and nowadays it's getting more common.
так
Like,
дорого?
frankly, the systems
Пытаются
are
денег
built
где
better for it.
заработать.
Hard drive speed is really prioritized. Like, they're so blazing fast. You take Skyrim and Oblivion and the fallouts of that 360 era. There was a lot of time spent on how do we get all this data streaming in as you move, and then levels of detail so you can see all the way, but not, crush the processor.
You know what? Let's even step back, because you mentioned tone. You mentioned tone a lot. What do you mean by tone?
It's all of it together. If you look at, I think you can flip through, let's just take fantasy. You can sort of look at a couple images or things and know, how does Lord of the Rings different from Game of Thrones, that is different than, a Arthurian like Excalibur, or your, Sci-Fi Channel, series of the month kind of thing. And so finding what's going to make it kind of unique, and usually I lean on something that is grounded in reality for what it is, and then have lesser kind of fantastical things, at least at the start, and then they kind of build. So even when we do Starfield, it's a science fiction game. There are laser guns and spaceships that fly around and shoot each other and blah, 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 blah. But it's grounded in, you can look at it and say, oh, okay, this is kind of an extension of things as we view them today in space. And we sort of take the same approach with Fallout, where admittedly things can get even a little bit crazier the longer you're developing Fallout content.
Что
So,
Скарим показать?
just
Да,
to,
есть такое. Вот
linger
я
on
сейчас
this,
зашел,
the
Скарим.
tone starts at, or defining the tone starts
Есть
at
такое.
creating a realistic experience. Like you feel like I could walk into this, and this feels like life.
Не, их
What's their
лучшая игра,
technology level,
наверное,
even for a
сейчас это
fantasy world? Like, is magic, how prevalent is
Fallout
it? Or are they
4.
making
Да,
weapons
это
and
последняя
things and
игра, по
armor?
сути.
Is it
Ну, не
for
мультиплеер.
utility? Is it for decoration? How do they live their lives? Does this feel like a place that
Ну,
you
сюжет плюс-минус
believe
можно
that has
игнорировать.
some
Он
grounding
не
in
настолько
our
сфокусирован,
reality,
как
whether
в аниме.
that's historical or near future, or that it's grounded in some semblance of the reality that you and I understand, so that it can feel. It's also making it feel a little bit welcoming, like, okay, I understand this.
Is that art
Можно
or
как сингл
science?
играть.
So like,
А, да?
how do you know when it feels welcoming and everything fits and is
I
grounded?
don't know. I mean, I guess it's personal taste. Some people like things that are weirder, that have more
Скорее,
fantastical from the
не,
get-go.
вообще не.
Even a game like Morrowind, where we get into some more fantastical things, it intentionally starts a little more grounded. You know, there's a very classic medieval-looking town that you come into, but you look just beyond it, and there are mushroom
Вот,
trees,
но они
and
давно делают
giant
Starfield,
insects, and
наверное.
things like that.
So in Skyrim, when you put a dragon in it, what are your thoughts about dragons?
А я
and
пояснял
tone?
уже по поводу диалогов. Я
does
понимаю
that fit
идею,
into tone?
она просто очень слабая. для
That's a great
доработки.
question.
Но ее
The-
можно игнорить, играя в Fallout 4. Вот в чём прикол.
It's a ridiculous question, but yeah, I just love
No, these
dragons,
are-
so I want to bring it up.
No. These are the things that
Thank you.
we debate with.
Do we include a dragon? Why didn't you include a dragon in Daggerfall? That's what I want to know.
I think there's dragonlings. They're hard to do. Dragons are hard to do. So when you start Skyrim, say, hey, look, dragons are going to be a theme. You start visually. I think, they're, you can make the argument that dragons existed. Okay, what would they look like? How close to dinosaurs would they be? Or what would they... And ours are less, I believe they're less fantastical looking in general. They look like beasts.
Блин, то, что, наверное, идея, которую они пытались достичь, или смысл от игры, типа, как Скарима, да, вот, возможно, подвязано на дракона было с тем, что ты вот герой, там, можешь кричать и так далее. И оно бы, наверное, если у них они дожали, получилось что-то в стиле... близкое по духу, наверное, Breath of the Wild, то, как получилось, возможно. Ну да, получилось то, что получилось по итогу.
That
На
could
Герфоле были.
exist in that world. And then how we introduce them, it's kind of a little bit of a slow,
А я слышал эту историю, да, про
role in
рисовку.
Skyrim. And that the
Потом
people in
приносил
the
то, что
world
хотел,
are
да,
reacting
этот
to
факт.
the
Что я могу
dragons
сказать?
appearing.
Спасибо мне!
Слушай сюда, цирковая обезьяна. Я тебя на фон включаю, чтобы ты мне там тихонько попукивал, пока я с серьезными людьми общаюсь. Еще раз заорешь, и я тебе пизды дам.
Саня Булыжник, спасибо большое.
And that's somewhat, mirrors. You want something that mirrors the player experience as well. It says back to you, like, hey, no, have you heard this? Someone saw a dragon.
Well, that's what Daggerfall. Isn't there mentions of dragons or something? Because I remember being sure
Прокачивается
that there's dragons in Daggerfall as I'm playing it and I'm searching.
Pretty sure. Well,
Is there a
there's
dragon in Daggerfall?
There's dragonlings in Daggerfall, to my memory. Look, I guess someone will probably correct me. Like, actually, there is a dragon here. But I'm pretty sure they're not.
Yeah.
And then, game I did, Redguard, which we bring back a dragon. It takes place beforehand, so we have a dragon there in that game, and that was unique to that at the time.
Yeah, just a brief tangent on that. I thought Redguard was a really, really good game. I played it as I mean, again, you don't.
Ну, свежая, 3 дня назад.
You forget stuff, but I remember getting. I guess it was the first in the Elder Scrolls series to put it into that world, but it was like an adventure game. It reminded me of another game I really love, like Prince of Persia.
That was one of the inspirations. Prince of Persia is one of my favorite games.
Roleplays. Мне показалось, что там особо...
I apologize if I'm forgetting, but you can like jump in buildings and stuff. Like there's a jumping, there's a dynamic, like airy nature, like it's a like parkour type of situation. Yeah, it was an incredible game. Why do you think? Let me ask sort of a dark question. Why do you think that game was a flop? One of the few you.
Not a dark question.
Yeah.
It was. Well, a lot of reasons. Game that I love and really got us going on a handcrafted world. So we're coming off of Daggerfall. Morrowind is sort of in design. And then, part of our development teams broke up to do different things. The game that did Battlespire and Redguard was my game. And I wanted to do something a little more Ultima feeling, handcrafted world. I really like things that blend up genres. So I know it's in the adventure game category, but it really does a lot of things. It's a love letter to Prince of Persia. There's a little Raiders of the Lost Ark in it. There's a lot of Ultima in it. And really see what we could do with the engine. But it very much, I think, plays like it would have had a much better home on, say, PlayStation or Xbox. This predates Xbox, right? Where it's much more like constantly Tomb Raider had come out. So you see those influences of Tomb Raider on that game. And 3D effects cards had just come out. And so, okay, we can do. And it was I think it's one of the last like DOS games in a Windows world. So I think it missed kind of a technology window as well as ultimately not what people wanted from us. And I felt I was really kind of the company let me make that game, and it was a big flop. Battlespire hadn't done well. The company was in a really bad shape, and I felt really like personally responsible. Like they let me do this creative thing. It didn't do what we needed it to do, and now we're in a very, very bad situation. Company almost went out of business. And that's when it got reformed with ZeniMax Media, and Robert Altman came in, and we were starting Morrowind. We had just sort of started, and it was sort of that whole experience that made you sort of realize, someone says to you, okay, you're going to get another shot. And that's where you're like, okay, we're going to make Morrowind and make the biggest, best RPG we can make. We know what the audience wants from us. We know what we could do. Building a world. So there's like callbacks to how we built the world in Redguard. Morrowind is a large-scale, handcrafted. But if you were to put it, pixel per pixel with Daggerfall, you wouldn't even see Morrowind, because Daggerfall is so big. But the impact of playing it, I think, is in many ways equal. It's different.
Just you personally, psychologically, did you have doubt about yourself from the performance of Redguard? Like, do I know what it is?
Of course.
Where do you get how'd you overcome that?
I don't know. I would say this honestly. I enjoy it so much. Like I'm so heads down. Like that becomes, for better or worse, like my life.
Yeah.
And it's just something that I want to play so much. It becomes like you get a little obsessed with it.
No, but I mean, you love Redguard, right? So like, doesn't that mean, isn't there a kind of self-doubt about, do I know what it takes to create a great game?
Well, no, I think Redguard's a great game.
Right, so you were sure, even if it wasn't...
Okay, so if you're going to debate, like, do I like that game? It's about finding okay, so I love Redguard.
Yeah.
And the people who play it won a bunch of awards, and it like, critically was a pretty good game. Did not sell. And the reason for that, again, like, we probably made the wrong type of game, and we missed a technology window. We also thought it was very conservative. We're going to do this. So my main takeaway was, I'm not going to be conservative again. I'm going to swing for the fences. And we've had, there'll be some rough edges in swinging for the fences and shooting for the moon. But we'd rather do that and land where we land than be very, very conservative in what we're putting out there.
You mentioned, just referencing this game, on a Reddit AMA, that long time ago during Redguard, the lead programmer made all the buildings hop up and down after you played for 10 minutes just to mess with me. Just a curious tangent. What's involved with programming an open world game? So we talked about we will talk about design and so on, but specifically the programming, because I think this question came from what are some interesting sticky bugs that you've encountered throughout your life in creating these games, and this is one of them that you mentioned. So what are some of the challenges of programming these open world games?
I mean, there are different flavors of them, right? Your GTAs will have different issues than, you know, the Ubisoft games versus our games. I can sort of, you know, speak to ours, which is you want to build systems, right? Because they're gonna play the game for a very long time as well, which we've learned, and you can't go through and touch everything by hand per se. So you have to rely on some systemic level of creation and a lot of systems that are robust enough so that when they touch another one, things aren't breaking apart.
So there's like what are the major systems? Is there like the physics of the game, the engine of how like stuff, the physics, the motion, and maybe how light is rendered and all that kind of stuff.
Right, so you have the rendering, right, of like, okay, this is how I'm going to render the data that I have. So a lot of people confuse engines with rendering. I mean, they're combined, obviously, but there's the data you're going to give to a renderer, which is the thing, you know, the audience, you know, that draws the pixels on the screen. So most of the engine is how are you going to bring in that data and give it to the renderer to draw it. So you have that whole system of walking through the world, feeding in the data and drawing it. You then obviously have the physics and the interactivity. What are the things that are there just to be drawn? And what are the things there that are meant to be interacted with and touched? We put a big premium on the ones that can be interacted with and touched, whether it's flowers, whether the trees move, whether you can sleep on the sofa, sit in this chair, pick up all this stuff, bake bread, blah, blah, blah. You then have the AI, which loops in the stuff we talked about earlier in terms of processing everybody, and combat systems, which is a lot of what people end up doing. Combat systems on top of that AI. How do they react to those types of things? And then how do they look at the things that can be interacted with? One of my favorite things is when NPCs will go pick up weapons in the world, which you don't see in other games. And the first time you see it in one
Короче, видно, что тот шарит, все дела, но просто он так говорит, типа, ну там на стульях сидеть и так далее. Не то чтобы это прям нужно, конечно. Не, ну ты можешь, да. Он немножечко как будто бы, возможно, преувеличивает значимость некоторым вещам, но типа...
One of ours, like very unexpected. You can drop like a crazy weapon, be in a fight, and an NPC runs over, picks it up, and uses it on you. It's not something you would expect. But I love that stuff.
And that's integrated into a larger system, the ability to pick up the NPC picking up.
Шарит в плане того, что он может делегировать работу людям и команды управлять.
They have their own AI for scanning the environment, and that's one of the rules. Hey, is there a weapon that is better than the one I have? I'm going to go get it. Now, we do lock off if it's in a chest, and that's treasure we left for the player. But it's in particular... Because what you don't want, we actually had this problem. It started in Oblivion, I believe, which is we set up a level. Hey, let the enemies go pick up the weapons if they're better. So we make a level and go in, and all of the enemies are armed to the teeth, and there's no treasure for the player because the enemies went and took all the good weapons. And he's like, okay, they don't take those. They take the ones that are dropped by other NPCs or the player.
That's such a fascinating world of the designing the experience for the NPC, because in part, that experience is defines the experience of the player. So how they interact with their environment defines how the player experiences their environment. Is there room for further and further development of the AI that controls the NPC?
Sure, we're always iterating on it. And again, as we look in the future, it's more about us finding those more reactivity to the player and also understanding their roles in the world. So they're not just there. They're not just there for the player as a signpost for the player.
But they're reacting to the player. But what about, some of the richest experiences we have with people is like the chaos of it, the push and pull, the unpredictability. is there something, I don't know if you've been following, but the quick, amazing development of language models, the neural network, natural language processing systems, dialogue systems. Do you think there's some possibility of using sort of these incredible neural nets that can have open-ended dialogue, basically chatbots?
Yep, I've seen some incredible demos. I do think it's coming. I don't know when.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of a question, like what's ready for real deployment and release versus, hey, let's use that to generate some things that is then static that we're giving to the players, versus it's generated on the fly. But it's definitely coming. It's definitely coming. And I think you'll see it in the types of games that we do. It has great, application.
I love the idea that you'll be using AI to design different...
Баланс игры. Да, сложность это, кстати, вопрос тот еще. Понять бы, что такое сложность, если так подумать, что значит быть сложно или несложно, причем по отношению к разным игрокам. Типа, это тяжелый вопрос. Тот занимается свитками. Не, он работает. Bethesda, да, они Starfield делают. Что это? Не, ну я оставлю. Ну да, зависит от игры. То есть что такое сложность, по сути? Это задача, которую тебе нужно решить, да, и насколько тебе в данной системе, в игре с ее правилами, типа, ты понимаешь или уверен, или не уверен. Наверное, так. Что думаешь по поводу ИИ? Ну, прикольно, просто лишь бы интересно было, наверное, генерация. Сложная стратегическая. Ну, не знаю. В голову стреляешь NPC и все. Да, ну то есть, понятное дело, что это зависит от игры. Короче, сложность это сложно. И сделать это интересно тоже сложно. То есть непонятно, на что ориентироваться, чтобы это было интересно. Наверное, так. Наверное, на... Блин, ну это как с интересными задачами, наверное, да, что вот ты какую-то задачку решил, и ты такой, блин, было слишком примитивно, допустим, но, возможно, было интересно или неинтересно. Или... Вообще хуй знает. Ну, наверное, уровни, ну ладно, окей, уровни, да, наверное, на этом сконцентрируюсь, то, что вот ты уровень какой-то строишь, и вот когда ты его построил и типа сделал такую какую-то определенную задачу для игрока, насколько эта задача true или не true, наверное, так. И чтобы это понять... Бля, хуй знает. Ну, наверное, интуиция нужна, если честно, не знаю, это сложно. Это дизайн, по сути, то есть ты как бы строишь вещь, какую-то систему, и типа ты, по сути, придумываешь задачу для других людей. И пытаешься ее, типа, сделать интересной при этом. Ну, чтобы ее было интересно решать. Это своего рода обучение, получается. Я сильно не задумывался об этом, это сложно. Easy to learn, hard to master. Ну, да. В Думе сложность идеально разработана. Я не фанат типа выбора сложностей. Да потому что если ты строишь игру, строишь уровни, там задачи какие-то делаешь и системы, и ты должен как-то придумывать для разных типа настроек свою настройку, которая будет влиять на всю игру. То есть это странно, короче.
NPCs and then testing if they're good enough. If they're like a little too crazy, you don't want like the super.
Right, but if we go back to it being reactive, some of that bot stuff, you know,
Я не думаю, что нейронки справятся с этим. Это нужно дизайнеру, программисту, типа, разбираться. Как... Ну, может, я просто не понимаю, что нейронка может в этом плане привнести. Она может... Ну, то есть, она будет поддаваться в определенный момент? Или как? То есть, в чем смысл? Может быть, смысл не в том, чтобы поддаваться. То есть, это зависит от того, наверное, что ты как разработчик хочешь, типа, сделать, реализовать какую идею в плане задач. Просто наслаждение жизнью, тогда можно не играть. Но что такое наслаждаться жизнью? Типа, не то чтобы это прям супер интересно, наверное. Типа, смысл в играх, скорее, как по мне. Не всегда пугали сложные игры пазла головы не тем, что они сложны, а тем, что их кто-то придумал. Динамическая сложность держать игрока вовлечен. Ну, наверное. Ну, не факт, что, типа, это в этом весь прикол. Ну да, наверное, зависит от игры. Типа, какие уровни, если уровни разные, то ты придумаешь разные уровни, то, как они проходятся. Потому что смысл игры — это ее пройти или выиграть. Хз. Чат-бота в OpenAI? Чат-бота нет. Но я играл в этот Dungeon AI, или как он там называется. Он был забавноватый. Я в нем залип. Но там просто была проблема в причинно-следственной связи и того, к чему, какому смыслу тебя пытаются привести. То есть проблема искусственного интеллекта, мне кажется, в том, что оно не знает, чему тебя научить, типа того. Или что оно, типа, что оно может сказать или передать тебе. То есть, как... То есть, что искусственный интеллект может тебе дать в плане задач? То есть, если искусственный интеллект тебе будет придумывать задачи, это, наверное, другой вопрос, да. Постоянное давление, чтобы был плюс-минус волны. Ну, наверное. Ну, короче, в плане динамичности, единственное, что я знаю, что было прикольно и прикольно игралось, это Left 4 Dead, на это все. И это они режиссером называли. Сложность, сколько понравится время, которое игроку, который уже прошел. Часто умирал, то полегче, если... Ну да, но просто насколько это интересно, динамичность, что просто урон уменьшался, но не то чтобы это, типа, супер прикольно. Знает информацию, которую вводит и принимает. Ну да. Neon White нет, не играл.
Incredible. It's then translating that into voice, and then is that being done by the client? Is it being done on a server? Is it baked into the game? There's like different flavors of it.
So there's still computational challenges. Like, how do you actually make that happen?
Right.
Well, what about in terms of creating the feeling of an NPC? What's the role of voice actors? And
awesome. Yeah. We work with a ton of voice actors, and they bring so much to it, and that's the thing. They, you know, we can write some stuff, and the best ones get in there and make it so much better, or even ad-lib things. And so we do a lot of voice recording, and we used to do it kind of like at the end of the project. And now we do it throughout. We start really early, and we just start recording. So we're recording for years and years, literally, probably 3 years. 4 years.
So part of the actual experience of the recording will help define the characters and the tone of the game.
Right, and we'll go back sometimes and, hey, we really like this. We want more of this. Let's do another session. Or, hey, we don't think this character's actually working. We want you to do you're going to be someone else now. Sorry, that got cut.
Do you ever try to sort of imagine that people fall in love with the characters, with the NPCs?
I do.
Like, I mean, do they get really attached to the...
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've done
like,
it in games.
These are like close friends, right? Like, you miss them.
100%.
Isn't that part
I
of the
actually,
thing you
like,
miss?
whenever I'm playing a game and there is, if there's like a friendship option or make friends or a romance thing, I find those moments really... I enjoy them. I find them pretty impactful emotionally to what we're doing. And so we've done a little bit of it. It's one of the things that we actually have pushed in Starfield. So we have a number of companions, but for them, we go, I won't say super complex romantic, but more complex relationships than we've had in terms of not just some state of they like you or they don't like you, but they can be in love with you and dislike something you did and be pissed at you temporarily and then come back to loving you.
So that relationship status, if it's complicated,
Ну, игры это про то, что ты
they're
обучаешься.
existing in that gray area. It's complicated. We're not dating. We're just
Well, it's in a lot of games, previous stuff, you just work your way up. They like you more and more and more and more, and now you're in a relationship.
Now you're in. Yeah.
And when you make them upset, you drift out of like it never happened. You drift out of it. Whereas we wanted one where, okay, we can be in a relationship and we've committed to each other in some way, but I just did something that really made you angry. And as opposed to just drifting out of that status, you're in a temporary, I don't like what you did state.
Wow, so some greater degree of complexity in the relationship with the companion.
A little bit.
A little bit. Are we
I
talking about?
I don't want to oversell that part, but
sure.
My point is, I think those things where you meet a character in a game and you do spend time with them, a companion in a game, and it leads to romance, myself and others, and I find a lot of players, those moments are really, really impactful and special to them because they did put in the time. That's another thing that I always come at it with, which is, I think people who don't play video games, they sometimes think like, oh, that's a waste of time, or that's not real, or that's not like, you're not getting a lot out of that. Like, well, you haven't really experienced it in the way that you can, because these moments that I spent in games, not the ones I made, other ones when I was growing up or even now, that is important time to me. Mm-hmm. Like, I love those moments. I felt really like proud of what I accomplished. And we want people to have that in our games, and the fact that they have had those experiences, and we hear from them and how important it is to them. It's like, no, this is really, really special.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, from a game design perspective, I wonder if you can honor the time you spent together with a game, because sometimes there's a heartbreak at the end of the game, like when you're. When you leave a game, there's it's a really complicated relationship, actually, because when you leave a game, it's almost like leaving a romantic partner, because
Я вспомнил вчерашний донат про концовку количества.
And there's a sense in which it was ephemeral, like it.
Right.
This is not.
Лучше бы это была концовка, на самом деле.
It was good. It was like you went to Vegas, you got drunk and stuff, but like, and now life goes on.
Сейчас я покажу этот клип.
Всем, кому интересна игра, просьба выключить звук. В конце главный герой обдрестается на весь экран, и у него отвалится жопа. Я плакал в конце. Он еще сказал: срать вечно.
I wonder if there's a way to sort of always carry that with you. I mean, I guess with words you can kind of
В какой-то степени
share
так и
with
было.
others. Like,
It's weird. I don't like now that we're in the age where you have achievements and you can look at your library and see your hours in games, like that's like it's almost like a scrapbook now. Like I wish, one of my wishes was like, I wish I had that achievement list for everything, like back to the late 70s.
Like every game you played.
Right.
Yeah, like you. I mean, that's one of the cool things with Xbox. Like, we're moving towards that direction. It'd be cool to be from like childhood. The first time you play a video game, it will actually tell you what is the first game you.
But you know
played.
what?
Yeah.
Kids today, they will have that.
They will have that. And see.
But you could look back and see. Oh my God! I put 1,000 hours in Daggerfall.
What is the first?
And my
game
last save was 1997.
Last save. Man, I don't know. Golden Axe, maybe? I'm trying to think what was the first game I ever played. No, it's probably Commodore 64 games, yeah. Yeah, arcade games. Okay. You mentioned Starfield. What is Starfield? And what's the origin story of this game?
We had always wanted to do something where you explore space. You know, the explore space role-playing game. So take the kind of games that we make and give it a little bit of a different spin. And, you know, the other games that I loved, there was a pen and paper RPG I loved, Traveler. It was one of the first games I made for the Apple II. I never finished it, right? I'm just doing it on my own. And I love this game. Starflight was one. Star Control 2 was a game that I loved. Sundog was a big one in the Apple II days that a lot of people don't know that I loved. And so a lot of us in the studio felt it was time to do something new. And we're going between Elder Scrolls and Fallout and going back and forth. And I mean, we love that. But hey, we've always wanted to do this explore the galaxy science fiction game. You know, now is the time
я думаю, что я сейчас
to do that.
And that's a brave move. So Fallout is
я уже час
post-apocalyptic
посмотрел, я, кстати, не заметил.
on a single planet. You know, Elder Scrolls series is on a single planet. So this is going out into the open
Elder
world.
Scrolls 6 вот здесь будет.
Many star systems, many planets. I saw that it's thinking about 100 star systems and 1,000 planets available to explore. What is that world of stars and planets like?
Well, you mentioned Daggerfall. We go back to some of that. Well, the first when we did it was, how are we going to render a planet, like pull it off for the player? Like, can we? Or do we have to sort of do it where you can't land on all of them? Or you're landing in a very controlled, small world space that we, you know, kind of craft, and you would have a very limited set of those.
Yeah.
You go back to tone, like, well, that's probably the wrong tone. And how can we say yes? Like, I want to land on that ice ball. So we started the game right after Fallout 4, so 2016. And the first thing we did was, how can we have a system to generate these planets and make them look, you know, I'll say reasonable, as opposed to, you know, fractally goop.
Well, what's the technical definition of goop? Fractally goop.
Fractally goop. You've probably seen a lot of like simulations, whether they're space things or landscape things, where they're using fractals and just the landscape does not look real. It just is like highs and lows and it's muddy. And so we did find a way. We came up with a way, had prototyped of building tiles, like large tiles of landscape, the way we would usually build them. We kind of generate them offline, hand do some things, and end up with these very realistic looking tiles of landscape, and then built a system that wraps those around a planet and blends them all together.
Прикольно.
And we had pretty successful results with that. So we thought, yeah, we could do this. And so there was a big design.
Какая игра Bethesda больше всего нравится? Наверное, Fallout 4. Но я его не проходил. Но он мне понравился. Чат-ботовый AI, там несколько скринов. Write a script for Hammer Level Editor to create a map for CSGO. Да, это все прикольно, но пускай построят карту, и будет интересно посмотреть, насколько интересно на ней играть.
The problem to solve in terms of, well, what's fun about landing on a planet where there's potentially nothing? Because there's a lot of planets and moons, if you kind of, right? In reality, well, there's nothing on them except resources. And so we spent a lot of time figuring out, okay, let's just lean in on that can A, be a lonely experience, as long as we tell the player, here's what's there, here are the resources that are there, go find them. But I equate it to that moment of we said about listening to the wind go and watching the sunset. And I do think there's a certain beauty to landing on a strange planet, being somewhat the only person there, building an outpost, and we are modeling all of the systems, because that's how we like to do things. So you can watch whatever that gas giant or moon, it will rotate and go, and sunrise, sunset, and all of those things that you would expect, and it's all really happening. And most people probably won't notice or appreciate all of that, but I think it gives them the ability to say, I want to go do that and see that on that place, as long as we tell them, hey, the quest leads over here, here's where the handcrafted...
по тайлам были сделаны, у них и до этого игры были так сделаны, то есть у них сам по себе инструмент, связанный с уровнями, по плиточкам делает, по чанкам этим. Прикольно то, что они с планетами придумали, то есть они типа делают, они по сути сделали систему такую, как Майнкрафт, а-ля генерация, и типа просто обертывали его в шар. Это забавно. Сейчас звучит как No Man's Sky делал. Да, вот я не пойму, он про графон говорит и про всякие ощущения и прочее, просто потому что он не может типа про геймплей говорить, и это будет многое выдавать, или что? То есть, мне кажется, он вполне мог бы говорить про геймплей или там говорить что-то в стиле, типа, сейчас будут спойлеры. Я не думаю, что это повлияло бы на продажи плохо как-то.
Content is that you would expect. And then here's more of the open procedural.
То есть вот это немного меня напрягает. То, что он часто вот говорит про атмосферу какую-то.
Planet experience.
So
просто геймплей его доделают завтра, да?
There's no questions are stupid and the answers are brilliant. So that's how this works. So this is the world's most immense simulator of the human condition of loneliness. Because I can't imagine a more lonely experience.
I mean, you put it that way. I don't know that was the goal.
Ну да, они handmade какие-то штуки делали, типа сгенерировали и потом на этом строили. В принципе, норм способ.
I mean, a deep embodiment of what loneliness is like. I mean, it's both on like when you hike alone. There's a deep loneliness to that. It's like it's humbling that this thing will last much longer than you. It's been here way before you.
Is it the line from the moon landing? Beautiful desolation. It's Buzz Aldrin, is it?
Beautiful desolation, is that what he said?
I think so.
Beautiful desolation.
Если не добавили,
well,
ну да.
But that's just words. There's a feeling to it, and you want that feeling to be real.
Ну тогда лучше говорить про то, что точно не
выпилишь. There's some resources here. I just feel like it will hit people at a certain moment, like it does for me with Skyrim. Like, holy shit, I'm here alone.
Я даже вот вспоминаю, может быть, плохо я помню, вот журнал «Игромания» в те времена, там, когда объясняли игру, ну или просто рассказывали про игру, там буквально описывали процесс того, что ты будешь делать, с чем ты можешь столкнуться и какие задачи плюс-минус ты будешь решать. То есть там всегда про это было. Там были тексты, там, ну то есть основная часть текста вроде бы не была про то, что, блин, там прикольно ходишь, трава трясется, классные запахи, там, не знаю, пердежа или что-то там вроде. Ну, вроде, сколько я помню. Вот.
And whatever cruel nature that's out there doesn't really care about me.
Exactly.
That's the experience. So you want to create the whole planet, and you want to have many of them.
Ну да.
We do have many, but once you build that system, I think the numbers become, I mean, honestly, a little bit. We wrap it in so we can name them all and have a finite set, even though it's a very, very large number, but a set that we can, you know, validate and know about, even though it's a huge number. But once you're building a system that can build a planet, I mean, a planet is sort of infinite space. We go back to the Daggerfall analogy. right? If you have systems to build that much space, doing 100 planets or 1,000 or 10,000 or 1,000,000 planets is not. It's just you just change the number and press the button. But you can't name them all. You can't control like when you're getting in really big numbers. Hey, what does this system way out here feel like if you take your ship and jump that far? We do level the systems. When you go to system, you'll see, oh, this is like a level 40 system. And us being able to at least control that scale is how we kind of ended up with the 100-ish systems we have.
What are the levelings? What do you mean by?
С вырыванием глаз 2, с обрубанием головы, типа с ртом и типа рукой 2. Как воспринимаю, это по сути не важно.
It would be like when you look at a map in a game, it says this is the area for low-level players.
У тебя примитивное представление об индустрии и разработке. Ждем твою игру, кстати, новаторскую и прорывную, конечно.
Спасибо большое.
This is level 1.
Oh, got it.
Yeah. So we do that on a system basis. Star system.
I read that space travel is considered dangerous in this game. Can you explain?
That's more of, that goes back to a tone thing, right? When you actually play the game, because it's a game, like we don't really kill you when you fly out into space. But it has a tone of there's some effort involved, and we've dialed it back as we've been making the game. Whereas we used to run out of fuel, you jump and get stranded, which on paper was a great, like, it's a great moment when you get stranded. You have to press this beacon, you don't know who's going to come. Turns out that's not like, it just stops your game. We found, you'd be playing the game and I ran out of fuel. Okay, I guess I'll just wander these planets trying to mine for fuel so I can get back to what I was doing. It just, it's a fun killer.
That's too realistic of a simulation of the human condition.
Yeah, no, the idea was, well, it's for, games do that. If you had like
YouTube video for his channel called About his Twitch chat and clan called Nasrana. Привет, меня... А, он на русском выдал? Что? Привет, меня зовут UselessMouth, и вы на моем канале. Сегодня я хочу поговорить с вами о моем чате на Twitch и клане под названием Насрана. Если вы не знакомы с моим чатом на Twitch, это место, где я играю в игры и общаюсь со зрителями в реальном времени. Мой чат известен своей дружелюбной и поддерживающей атмосферой. Я люблю видеть новых людей, которые присоединяются к нам. Кроме того, у меня есть клан под названием Насрана, который состоит из активных участников моего чата. Мы играем в разные игры вместе, организовываем соревнования, помогаем друг другу улучшаться. В этом видео я хочу показать вам некоторые из наших игровых сессий и рассказать о нашей динамике как команды. Мы всегда рады новым игрокам, поэтому, если вы хотите присоединиться к нам и играть вместе, не стесняйтесь писать мне в чате на Twitch. Спасибо за просмотр, до следующего видео. Add section describing his moderators, specifically Fapach 002. Кстати, я хотел бы сказать несколько слов моих модераторов в чате на Twitch. Мы имеем небольшую команду вежливых и полезных модераторов, которые помогают мне управлять чатом и обеспечить дружелюбную атмосферу. Одним из них является Fapach 002. Он начал играть в мои игры несколько месяцев назад и сразу же показал себя как отзывчивый и хороший человек. Он всегда готов помочь новым игрокам и заботиться о том, чтобы все оставались дружественными и дружелюбными. Я рад иметь Fapach 002 как одного из моих модераторов, и я думаю, что он отлично подходит для этой роли. Да как будто нейросетка взяла какие-то тексты, связанные с киберспортсменами, которые присоединились к каким-то командам, что-то такое. Если вы хотите узнать больше о Fapach 002, присоединяйтесь к моему чату на Twitch и познакомиться с ним сами. Description specifically Bassage, Troll, Despair, роль. Кроме того, у меня есть несколько эмоций, которые я создал для моего канала на Twitch. Это специальные изображения, которые могут использовать зрители в чате, чтобы выразить свои эмоции и участвовать в общении. Одна из моих любимых эмоций называется Bassage. Это изображение двух котов, которые смотрят друг на друга и поют песни. Я люблю эту эмоцию, потому что она отлично подходит для различных ситуаций в чате и всегда приносит улыбку на лице зрителей. Еще одна популярная эмоция на моем канале Troll Display. Это изображение знаменитого интернет-мема с лицом тролля и словом «О боже, почему я это сделал?». Эта эмоция часто используется в ситуациях, когда кто-то делает что-то неожиданное или необычное. Вот так вот. Спасибо большое.
Like a hardcore You're right. A hardcore survival mode. It's the kind of thing you would do. Maybe we'll do it in the future. But it's more of like a tone, how they build their ships. Do they have all the right things for safety? We do get into environmental things on the planets, you know, in your spacesuit. Obviously, there are a lot of different spacesuits and buffs for, you know, the gases, or the toxicity, or the temperature on various planets.
Как бигинерская такое,
Are there robots?
Yes.
Those companions, are they robots by chance? Can you
One
say?
of the companions is the robot Vasco, yeah.
Okay, so they have a name and a person.
про геймплей говорил, да.
Some buffs for the planets, you know, in your spacesuit. Obviously, there are a lot of different spacesuits and buffs for, you know, the gases, or the toxicity, or the temperature on various planets.
Окей, я понял. То есть, по сути, тебе нужно найти ключ к тому, чтобы где-то по какой-то планете ходить. Ключом будет типа костюм.
Are there robots?
Yes.
Those companions, are they robots by chance? Can you
One
say?
of the companions is the robot Vasco, yeah.
Okay, so they have a name and a personality and so on, and
Vasco does, and then there's a whole bunch of, I call them generic robots. We use them for utility. You know, okay, people, we actually dialed them back, because if you think about, well, you know a lot about this more than me in terms of...
I'm offended right now. You calling robots generic? And
No, the ones
back.
we use. The ones we use. We
Okay.
made them more generic. We didn't...
Sorry,
we
I'm
didn't,
very
we actually,
sensitive about this
I
stuff.
understand.
Very.
If you were to chart the future, you would say robots would have a
Можно,
much
чтобы
bigger
дойти до
role in
дальних.
our future than we are presenting.
Ну, если
but
они сделают какую-то штуку... Ну, посмотрим. Может быть, по итогу Starfield... Ну, то есть, по-хорошему, им, наверное, как референс какой-то или какие-то идеи можно было брать из космических рейнджеров, что-то такое. И мне интересно, вот пока ты по космосу летишь, можешь ли ты встретить какой-то, например, пустой корабль, который ты пристыковываешься, и там квест какой-то начинается. Ну, как вариант, типа того.
It was a tone thing. So most of our robots are there as utility robots, and there are some combat ones as well as enemies.
So it's a deeply human world.
Very much, yes.
In terms of
Yes.
tone.
Не будет Ну, надежда есть.
Have you talked to Elon about this?
Ну, что-то такое можно придумать.
A little bit.
How much of reality, like the work of SpaceX, is an
есть вы думаете, это просто
inspiration
будет
for the
Minecraft,
decisions
что ли?
made in this game?
I wouldn't say it's for the decisions we made, but you know, visiting SpaceX and walking in there, it was...
только на орбиту?
It's like the Avengers meets NASA. It's like the most amazing. And here we're building the next gen, like see the Dragon stuff before it was, you know,
Skyrim
other
прикольные
people saw it.
ситуации
Like, just,
генерирует, но
I was
в
really
целом, как игра скучновата.
in awe.
То есть такое ощущение, что это, ну, для меня лично это была на сессию какую-то определенную. Ты забежал, что-то произошло,
giant, you know,
и вышел.
Fuselage. I just, you know, whenever, and because, you know, we're in DC,
Поэтому
go to the Air and Space Museum a lot,
плюс-минус
so whenever I look
подходят
at
порномоды.
those kind of things, or, you know, you'll visit the space shuttle, sort of overcome with how big it is, and I go stand back by the engines and think about that thing leaving orbit. You know, and one of the things that Elon really impresses, like, we're reaching the edge of physics on a lot of this stuff, where how hard it is to leave orbit, the gravitational pull. And like, so the engineering that has gone into that, our space program, what he's doing now, I just marvel at. I don't understand, right? I'm not at that level, but I marvel at the kind of human ingenuity and scale. I was on the Delaware coast last month, and I was outside for some reason. It was dark, and I saw this crazy light in the sky, and I thought it was like a helicopter, and then it didn't go away, and I'm like, what is that? And I called we had with some friends. Hey, does everybody see this? What is that? And we just stood dumbfounded looking at this thing in the sky. And
Киберпанк.
Like, that is a UFO. Nobody takes their phone out. Everyone, I'm with like 4 people. Mm-hmm. Everyone is too dumbstruck. You would think, why don't you take a picture of this thing? And the next day we found out, it was in the news, it was the SpaceX launch in Florida. And I'm seeing it from Delaware, Maryland area. It was it was incredible. It's just, even just that, I am in complete awe of.
Is there some aspect of that you can replicate, the majestic nature of that in the video game?
I wish I had the answer to that. You know, I think some of it we're doing when you're standing on a planet and you see the other moons go by, and then you realize I could get in my ship, blast off, and land there and build myself a home. I think that's pretty cool. There's a minor thing we do, which is we have other ships come and go from the starports when you're there. So you'll be in a city, and you hear the engine, you look up, and a ship is taking off or coming. Like,
that's great.
There's nothing for you to do, but I think it's awesome.
Yeah. And then that's all about creating the soundscape, the feel.
Seeing it and like, oh, that's real. That's a ship that... Or you jump into a system and you see these freighters, and sometimes they contact you. Like, it's not all just like jump in and combat.
Do you ever think about the fact that science fiction seems to make... it has a way of creating reality, not just kind of predicting it or imagining it? It's almost like the thing you put out there with a video game like this, like Starfield, that you can't anticipate. It kind of fuels people's imagination of what is possible.
Maybe, I don't know. I can't say. You're making me think now about other science fiction. That movie I love, Minority Report. It's more of like not a space movie, but more like looking at the future. If you look at a lot of the things in that movie, it's almost like, I think those are coming true.
Yeah. I mean, is that the one that you do interface this, like...
It's the interfaces, and then the way he looks at his child's more like a holographic, almost AR, VR kind of thing, or digital billboards, or trying to predict human behavior. There's just a lot of future stuff in that movie. As it comes to sci-fi, to your other question, I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I think it does, and it's interesting. I mean, I suppose you're trying to create the most realistic, sticking to the tone, the most immersive, realistic world, and almost by accident you create the thing that is possible, because you want it to be realistic in some deep sense. So accidentally it can become the possible, and then that places that idea in people's heads. I mean, if humans are ever to become a multiplanetary species, we need to play games. We need to read sci-fi to help imagine that that's possible. To look outside of Earth, to look up on the stars, and we can actually travel.
У вас в основном свет оставляет
I
на
don't know.
вечер?
There's power to sci-fi to do that. I guess you shouldn't feel the pressure of that.
I don't know if I'd make the
Типа
leap
днем нет или как?
now. That's all. That what we're doing
график.
might. Now, maybe, one of our, hopefully it might inspire some young people who are headed in that direction of like, oh, I thought about getting into space and space exploration and being an engineer or doing these things, and I played this game, and it really sparked that interest in me, so I'm going to go take that as a field, and maybe that's the person who goes and does some of these things.
Yeah, because in the next couple of decades, likely a human being will step foot on Mars, which are the first steps towards us becoming multi-planetary.
And then if you read some of the stuff they're doing with the James Webb Telescope, and them being able to look for signs of life on other planets, it's quite fascinating. And, recent stuff I read say they think in 20 years they will. So it's actually quite encouraging to think. It's almost a dream of mine, like in our lifetimes, that we discover life on another planet.
Yeah, especially if it's intelligent life. I've been talking to a lot of biologists and a lot of folks. I imagine there's life everywhere out there.
The numbers would say so, yes.
The challenging question is what it looks like and how much of it is intelligent. So a lot of biologists tell me the big difficult leap is from the prokaryotes to the eukaryotes. So like the complex life. It could be that a lot of our universe is just filled with bacteria.
Well, I believe, if I'm understanding it right, that there's two ways they're going to look at planets. When they can look at, they can read, hey, this planet has this kind of gas. They can now look at the ones that are created by potential life forms, and then the ones that are created, the byproducts of industry. There's only certain ones that are created if you have a society there. And that they can start looking on these types of star systems and these planets. But it takes a lot of time because you have to book time on that telescope. You have to look at that planet over a long period of time. But in theory, given enough time, given the amount of space out there.
Сейчас будет Elder Scrolls 6. Там много чего-то странно.
That would be a cool thing in this short life of ours to find out definitively that there is an industrial intelligent civilization out there. Before you contact them, so die, end your life, not knowing the rest of the story, but just know that it's out there. That's a cool. And then if you have kids, be like, well, this one's on you. F this, I'm out.
And I'm fascinated by what it would do to the way, I think in a positive way, the way humanity thinks about itself here. No, there is definitively other life out there.
I mean, both things. If there isn't life out there, that's also...
кстати, они же диалоги теперь вернули, как в Обливине было, что камера...
If we're alone, it's super exciting because there's a responsibility to preserve whatever special thing we have going on here.
Вроде бы,
this, whether you call it the flame of consciousness or whether it's consciousness or intelligence, that's the special thing. Preserve it, have it expand. But if there's others out there, I mean,
Мне, кстати, нравится, как в Обливине было
sparks
сделана эта тема.
that drive for exploration, of reaching out into the stars and meeting them. Most of them probably want to kill us. So, but luckily we have the military-industrial complex on Earth that builds bigger and better weapons all the time.
We have Space Force.
Space Force.
Просто это же в какой-то степени также и в реальной жизни работает. Если мы слушаем людей, мы смотрим на них, слушаем внимательно. То есть это по ощущениям, как будто бы если реально лицо было на весь экран. Своего рода. Так что... это и прикольно. Просто, то, как это в Скайриме сделано, где ты встаешь, с тобой начинают говорить, это от твоего лица. То есть, не знаю, мне кажется, это какой-то даунгрейд идеи от Обливиона было.
Both protect us and destroy all our enemies.
Да, в Обливине еще это приближение такое было.
This is 100% a video game we're living in. Okay, back to dragons. So blink once if you know when Elder Scrolls 6 is coming out, but are not going to tell me.
Okay. I have a vague idea.
Okay, vague idea. So if you have the quantum mechanical interpretation that allows for multiple universes in the universe where you didn't blink, what would that, Todd, tell me about the year it's coming out?
Fall 4 там по классике вроде бы выставлялись кадры, не?
Or 26.
I've been asked that question many ways, but never like that.
Yeah, I thought I would try to sneak it. I mean, there is of course no answer because
I wish it was soon. We want them out too,
Догонять тебя в жопе мира,
and I wish they didn't take as long
это
as they
прикольно.
did, but they do.
Интимный
And
разговор,
look, I mean, if I could go back in time, would never have been my plan to wait as long as it's taken for it.
So you love that world, the Elder Scrolls world?
Well, look, it's part of why I've spent more time there than anything else in my life, probably, right? So, it's deeply love it. We all do. It's a part of us, and
озвучка какая-то.
when you aren't doing it for a while, you really do miss it. And when I look at what we're doing, have planned for that game, and I was in a meeting yesterday. I was like, I just want to play all this right now. But we're going to make sure we do it right for everybody, and we do have to approach it. People are playing games for a long time. Skyrim's 11 years old, still probably our most played game, and so we don't see it slowing down. Yeah. And people will probably be playing it 10 years from now also. So you have to think about, okay, people are going to play the next Elder Scrolls game for a decade, 2 decades. And that does change the way you think about how you architect it from the get-go.
What are some elements that change the way, like how do you make a game that's playable for 20 years? So
we're trying to figure that out, but
there are some elements. I should pause on that. You know, part of me, I'm of course asking jokingly. I'm excited for it, but I think Skyrim is an amazing game still. You know, I really enjoy it still.
Yeah, and you know what? The content, even if you step away from it for a while, then play what I'll say the vanilla version without mods. If you go and haven't played it in a while, there's always a new way to play it. But then if you look at the mods and what creators are doing to it, we think that is just awesome. Mm-hmm. It's something that we've always supported. We're going to keep supporting.
Воображаемую линию взаимодействия. В смысле, что камера не повернется, например, в сторону слева от Тодда, типа того. Что вот они сейчас сидят, и вот она здесь на 180 градусов, в рамках 180, типа это 8 называется. Окей. Не пересекаешь, что-нибудь типа где-то здесь камера стоять, имеется в виду? Гифку на картинку канала вставлять? Мне не нужно. Спасибо. Персонаж слева всегда будет слева при диалоге. Окей. Это как метод, да.
Hired a large number of modders that are now professionals. We want to support the people who are doing on their own so they can be professionals on their own.
Okay.
Wow. And how do you create a world that's moddable? So you think of designing the game from the start as that enables mods.
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts with us, like everything we're doing. Okay, a modder, a content creator is going to have to use our tools. Now, we do clean them up for release, because if you're like a developer in-house, you can deal with some kludginess when you're putting stuff together. When you put it out for people, we do clean a lot of it up. And there's still obviously a learning curve there. But we have people who've been doing it for 20 years with us.
What's involved with modding? I'm actually quite noobish at this.
Okay.
And I'm almost afraid to ask, because now that you explained to me, I fear I will spend a very large amount of time creating mods.
Well, we have an editor you can download on Steam, the creation kit for our games, and then it loads up the world, and you could do something really, really small, like change the color of the weather. And it creates a little plugin file, we call it, a modification to the game, and then you can run your game with that. It's on console now, the mods, not the editing. And it's just been incredible. Our community there has been amazing what they do with the games.
So a lot of it is the visuals.
A lot of people do visual things because it's the easiest thing to do first, or they'll build a new space. There's some great things with, I love the Khajiit follower mod for Skyrim. It's awesome. There have been quest lines. Those things just take a really, really long time. And so someone who's going to do that, that's almost like it takes them a long time. It's more than a hobby. And we're always looking at ways that we can make it like, hey, they can turn a career into it because it's just awesome.
What about, is there any possibility in doing a mod for some of the AI stuff?
There is, and I've seen some, but to really move it along, if they're using the tools that we already put out there, so to really move the AI along, you'd have to get in the code, which some people have figured out ways to hack in and do things with script extenders. But for the most part, really pushing it, it does take us, which is why you see when we have a new game come along, the palette that they have is there's so many more things they can do.
Well, I've built bots that play the driving games, but they do that by just reading the screen and doing not basic, it's actually pretty complicated, but computer vision, doing the control. But you're basically simulating the human player. To do that for Skyrim or for some of the open world games, that's literally you have to create AGI to be able to.
Да, мод комьюнити,
to
ну,
play
он о чем-то знает наверняка.
those open. Well, maybe not. Maybe you can create a
Вроде
super
не
dumb,
установили.
like just a two-handed sword and just keep
через
swinging
SKC
until
вот
everybody's dead.
Look, there's some bot stuff out there that does it. We have some very, very dumb bots that we use to run through the world to test it. That we'll deploy on a whole bunch of servers just to, we do it every day. We run through every space. We're doing Starfield.
And then just running, they're all out there.
Well, it does it very quickly. It loads up every place in the game and runs around a little bit, and then loads the next place and runs around a little bit. We're just testing, like, did it crash? What's the memory growth? Get a report. Here are all the places where the frame rate wasn't up to snuff. And then we do have one that will play on its own. It's heavily scripted, but it lets us test. Every time we make a build, there's a bot that runs through, like, the first one or two main quests. Like, it'll just play it. That way we know, did we break anything? Because you don't want to waste, like, QA's time. Like, you guys broke it again within 5 minutes. So, yeah.
Yeah, so that's for like broken stuff.
Right.
I wonder if you can build a bot that estimates the quality of the experience.
Oh my gosh. Okay, can you do that?
Обоснованно.
But just like the number,
Потому как тот
like
общается,
how boring or
рассказывает, да,
not boring,
вполне.
the boring meter.
How
Ну,
many
он
times
как
did you
человек, который может
How many times you
определенно
die?
управлять
Is
командой.
death boring or exciting? That's the question. I mean, I feel like there's a balance to be
Немного
struck
голова не
there
знаю.
because you always want to be in fear of death. Against
Yeah, we have
actual
this
condition.
chart at work we use, which is like if you think about any games that you've played that you've put down,
Читаем.
it's either about a frustration / confusion or
Можно будет
boredom.
срать шестое.
Yeah.
You got to put the player right in the middle of that.
But I've sometimes put down games from frustration only to return again stronger.
За них играют боты. Ну, если ты сделал уровень какой-то определенный,
the challenge,
то, в принципе,
that's part of it.
тебе
Well,
нужно
I don't
дальше
know.
работать.
Actually,
Ты просто
Skyrim, I'm
записал,
one of
как
those- I mean,
проходится
I'm sure
уровень,
there's all
и
kinds of
проигрываешь,
people
чтобы
you've
все окей
interacted
было.
with
Проверяешь.
about what they enjoy. But to me, I could enjoy Skyrim on any difficulty level. It doesn't.
difficulty.
It's part of it. It's again put down game.
Frustration? Any game that you've played that you've put down, it's either about a frustration / confusion or boredom.
Yeah.
You got to put the player right in the middle of that.
But I've sometimes put down games from frustration only to return again stronger.
Dark Souls? Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's I mean the challenge, that's part of it. Well, I don't know. Actually, Skyrim, I'm one of those. I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of humans that you've interacted with about what they enjoy. But to me, I could enjoy Skyrim on any difficulty level.
Да,
It doesn't-
иногда
all of it.
пропускаем эмоции.
So it depends. The open world nature of it is
Stress
what's
chat.
really compelling. Not necessarily the challenge of the particular quest and so on. But I'm not sure if that's the same experience for everybody.
Do you play the survival mode? There's a survival mode in Skyrim. It was a Creation Club thing. It does like some hunger, it does hot and cold, it does some other systems that make it, in our minds, a more believable. It was actually a Creation Club thing made by an external creator who is now full-time with us.
So can we actually, thinking about Starfield, thinking about Elder Scrolls 6, go through the full life of a video game that you've created? So what's it take to take a game from the idea to the final product? What are the different steps along the way?
Great question. Well, usually it starts with, honestly, lunchtime conversations with a number of us. Hey, we think we want to do this. This is what it's going to be like. Look, with an Elder Scrolls, you're going to do it. It's a matter of when. You say, okay, what's the tone we're going for, right? Where's it set? So we usually start with the world. And then we're always overlapping. So while we're making one game, as we're, getting in the throes of it or wrapping it up, probably by the midpoint of one game, we've had enough conversations to understand what the next one's going to be. What are the big ticket, like, where's it set? What's the tone? Is there a big ticket feature or two that make it really unique? And then when we're finishing one game, we start...
Синоним типа темы имеет в виду?
prototyping. Sorry, before that we start concepting. So we'll do concept art, and for one reason or another, I usually have the beginning of the game worked out. I like to think about, okay, how's the game start? What's the player do first? We do music early, So take Elder Scrolls 6. We figure out where it's set. What's the tone? What are the big features? We discuss the beginning of the game, which we've had for a very long time.
Where's it set again?
Yep. In Tamriel. And...
damn it. Well, at least we know we narrowed it down. That would be epic if it was like a portal into another dimension. Anyway.
Then I like to do music. So we've already done a take on the music for Elder Scrolls 6.
So you can sit there with the concept art and the music and you can feel it.
No, the music we put in the teaser for it. This was 2018. We've taken that further, obviously. And again, we're working on the world. You're then doing concepting and design for the world, and then once we're wrapping up one game, we can really start prototyping the new one, and you're usually building kind of your initial spaces. And so we do like to do like a first playable, a smaller section of the game that we can sort of prove out and show to people, hey, this is how it feels different, this is what it looks like, this is what's unique about it. Then we turn that into a larger chunk when more of the team comes on, when the other game is done. And that's still what we call a VS, vertical slice. So you still don't have the full team on it. And it's a larger chunk of the game that you can play. And then once you feel good about that, you're going to bring on the rest of the team. And we're fortunate that the other games we've done are popular enough that we can be doing DLC and content and those kind of things while we're getting the one going. And then we're at full production, where we're sort of at maximum size. We just call that production. That's like the full production period. And that, depending on the game, can run a year, 2 years, maybe more. And then you kind of have a final 6 months to a year on a game, which is, okay, we've built everything now. And usually it needs a lot of glue, where we have a lot of very different elements that maybe aren't clicking together the way you want, outside of the regular polish for levels and features. And we're shaving and gluing and sticking things together so that it's not this schizophrenic game experience, that things flow from one into another.
In terms of story, like on that level?
It's really, usually the story, the designers have done a really good job. It's more about game features,
Да, на английском
and then how they interact with the story. Or, hey, I went from this experience to this experience. Or picking flowers and alchemy feels like a different game than... And then how is another character referencing that? Hey, I went from this experience to this experience. Or picking flowers and alchemy feels like a different game than... And then how is another character referencing that? And how is that intersecting with the skill system and the interface? Like, the skill system and the interface is the party host. If you think about a game, most games, particularly what I like to do, is that's your person who says, welcome, do this, go here, check this out. And the skill system and the way it reacts on the HUD, the interface of the game, is sort of leading you to the next thing. And once you get that flow down and the rate at which the game is giving you activities, then you're in like what we describe as a game flow. It's not till really that last year. Before that, the game flow is just, it doesn't even exist in the way that you see it in the final game. And that's what we're working on a lot that last year.
So at which point does like the set of skills, the skill tree, the characteristics of the role-playing aspect of it, when is that set? The ideas?
We usually have it in the beginning, but it's just, we know it won't be done until that last year. We'll have one, but we know it's going to get honed. Because it's not until you really see, okay, how impactful is that one? How much are you doing it? Like, how much are you really... And the main combat ones, they always win. You always know the players will drift toward the combat type skills because every character needs some amount of that. But, okay, well, how important is cooking? How important is alchemy? How important is these other type of activities? And then how do you balance them where when you load up the skill menu, it isn't automatically give me plus 10 damage.
Шея,
do you get
ну, шея, руки, да,
about the
это
combat system? That does seem
тяжело,
to be
как
an
бы,
important part of a
скрыть.
lot of games.
Start in the beginning, yeah, every time. Yep. So usually when we're making that first playable, it's
Подтяжки.
an area you can go through.
Да, по-хорошему,
some amount of
наверное,
dialogue, some
всем
amount of
нужно
combat.
делать эту подтяжку уже
How do you
после
get the
50.
combat right? What's the secret to a great combat system?
Ну, давай.
Well,
тут.
first on a control side, helping the player when they don't realize it. There's a lot of tricks you can do with magnetism in terms of the controller and where the attacks go. So it has to feel, the minute to minute has to feel really good in your hand. So there's a lot of animation time, right? And changing animations so they're impactful and they happen at a rate that the player feels like they're really doing it.
До проекта, да.
And then ultimately, it's the illusion that the enemies are smart.
Ну, если я правильно его понял, они типа, да, окей, строят мир, все дела, там рисуют арты и прочее, и потом игру делают... Не, они делают типа разные системы, что-то там придумывают, а потом уже связывают все, начинают типа последний год. У них такой рабочий процесс.
But they really are their enemies are smart. And then ultimately, it's the illusion that the enemies are smart, but they really are there for you to kill them, right? So they do a lot of things to just let themselves get killed. They're not as near as smart as we can make them, because it turns out that is not fun.
Right. So there's a balance between, but there's that is, I guess, a kind of AI, and it's a very intimate interaction with an AI, because it's like there's a lot of stuff going on. It's not just very kind of shallow, like a dialogue or something like that. It's
Cycle, ты про начало имеешь в виду?
there's a time critical nature of it. A lot of stuff is happening,
Как и
and
сюжет хочется.
if
А,
anything
ну,
feels
кстати.
off, it's gonna feel wrong.
А, дальше как?
Yep, all the games do it. You know, it's not unique to what we do in terms of how they
Цифрота
handle
защищается.
combat
Да, я прошел,
scenarios.
блин. Ну, в детстве.
And there's some games that just do it extremely well in terms of even in multiplayer where you're playing bots and most people don't know it, or how a multiple enemy scenario is really, you know, they don't all shoot you. They trade off. They're going to wait. And I was like, all right, I'll just wait my turn because we don't want to overwhelm them. But you feel like you're overwhelmed when there's 6 enemies. But, you know, a good game will, no, they're going to take their time.
Is there a science to it? Is it
Видео
art?
тренер.
Is it like how
Yes,
how did,
yes. I mean, it's all of that.
So it's like an iterative process where you try different things. You have different
Yep,
ideas.
there's a
mixture
lot of
animation.
There's a
and
lot of
sound design.
timing, animation work, HUD work also. How does the reticule change? What are the little sound effects?
What about like the gamify, like that is fun?
Again, that goes back to the winning. You know,
Right. So winning is fun.
yes,
Death is not.
yes. Let the Wookiee win.
I like how you have to dumb down the AI to make it fun for humans. Because if you didn't, it would just be slaughter nonstop for all humans. That's good to know. What about things like you said cooking, like crafting, making potions and poisons and smithing, weapons and armor, cooking.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get that right? What's interesting there? It's such an interesting you know, a lot of games don't have that kind of thing. So what role does that play in?
You know, I think we
in the games you
really
create?
cracked it in a way I liked with Fallout 4 actually, where when we're doing Elder Scrolls, we have like the flowers and things, and you have alchemy, and we took this to, okay, if it's post-apocalyptic, what if everything in the world was an alchemical ingredient of some kind? So breaking it down to their components. So when you walk around a world like that, again, we like the simulation. We like the forks and the spoons and the cups and all that. Okay, how can I use those to create? So I love how it starts working in Fallout 4, where, okay, all these things I find, they have some value in creating or crafting outside of a cup is worth 1 gold piece or 1 cap.
By the way, I have to be honest, I haven't played Fallout 4. I played Fallout 3. I thought that was a legendary game. I've been can you make a case for Fallout 4?
Да, там крафт
Should I just wait till Fallout 5? And when does that come?
I think you should play Fallout 4. Love to hear your thoughts.
All right.
It's a different game.
Skyrim is too. I mean, it's
We try to make them all different. They all
they
have
are fundamentally different.
they all have their
Different
own tone. Yeah, so Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 intentionally a very different tone.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah.
So what's that world like? What's the post-apocalyptic world of Fallout? If we can just briefly take a stroll into that world, tone-wise.
Well, in entertainment, there's a lot of post-apocalyptic stuff. And what makes Fallout tick is the world that was left behind, the world that blew itself up, this utopian world of nuclear energy, and it all goes wrong. So I love the American dream of that, like how they visioned the future in the 50s and that blowing itself up. I think that's like a super interesting place to explore, which is why we always wanted to play in that world. And it does an amazing job of sort of weaving, the drama and darkness of a post-apocalyptic world with B-movie humor. It winks at the camera sometimes, often actually, and that when you're in that world, it just has this its own unique flow and vibe outside of anything else kind of in that genre.
So Elder Scrolls has, or at least Skyrim has some humor.
Has a little bit.
But Fallout leans into it a little more.
A little bit more. Yeah, it does. It's like ironic humor. It's the duck and cover. It's to get under your desk if the bomb comes and everything will be fine. It's that type of humor.
So the funny thing is, I do think Fallout 3 is one of the greatest games ever. You've said that, quote, when we started Fallout 3 in 2004, we obviously had big ideas of what we could do with it, and had talked to a lot of people, from ex-developers to press folks to fans. What made it special? What are the key things you'd want out in a new one? The opinions, and I'll put this mildly, varied a lot, but they would all end the same, like a stern father pausing for effect, but do not screw it up. How do you
я вообще не понимаю, как крафт можно сделать интересным.
You have not screwed up many games.
Наверное, чтобы он был осмысленным для твоих задач, какая-нибудь такая хрень.
Yeah, that was, I remember that we were met with a lot of skepticism in terms of, what are they going to do with this? It was a beloved kind of isometric, turn-based role-playing game. Awesome for when it came out. And actually, it was announced. We had finished Morrowind, but not announced Oblivion. But because we acquired the rights,
крафт в Майнкрафте это своего рода, он подвязан на том, как ты передвигаешься, да. Наверное,
I just remember we had to announce it, and we're thinking there, well, we're gonna piss off all the Elder Scrolls fans because we're announcing a Fallout game.
Ты раскопал кубы, использовал эти кубы, чтобы что-то сделать, типа
we
как
didn't make the original, and clearly we'll probably make a different kind of game. So I do remember, there was a lot of concern with all of our fans and fans of Fallout at the time. And so I think it was pretty rewarding for us that game found the audience and success that it did. Is one of my favorite projects that I've ever worked on. And because it was so fresh for us, we had a very clear, even before we had the rights, this is the game we're going to make. This is the kind of thing we're going to do. And we had done Morrowind, then we were working on Oblivion. And it was kind of a breath of fresh air to do it. And what's kind of remarkable is Fallout 3 comes out just, 2.5 years after Oblivion. And we did all this DLC for Oblivion. So we were really, really kind of prolific in how our development, how it was going. So I just remember enjoying making that game so much because it was everything we were doing was new.
Which aspect of the world creation, was there some innovation technically that was happening
the
too?
World creation, it was, obviously a different look, even though some of us, very few of us had worked in the the VAT system, the skill system, and we loved the original game so much, so you felt this responsibility to bring it back in a big way and reintroduce it in a way that, as much as we could, scratch the same itch when you played the original game that had the same tone.
Are there some favorite things to you about that world? that just kind of connect you to the humor.
Fallout 3, I love. Again, I usually start with the beginning. I love the beginning. I love the character generation. If you played it a lot or you're developing it, it starts to feel really long. Mm-hmm. But the first time you play it or second, I just think it's awesome. And this idea, it's a hard thing to say, okay, we want you to feel like your character on the screen. Even when you play like a Skyrim, you don't know what you were doing before that. But Fallout 3, you were born in the vault and you raised in the vault and you lived in the vault, but you experience a part of that. So it's a very different, when you step out, I think it really, I mean, the visuals are the visuals, but the emotional moment of stepping out of the vault, you feel like you lived your whole life in the vault.
And you feel like you have a sense of your past.
Right. And I need to find my father.
We should, isn't it possible to have that sense with like Elder Scrolls? Like a life story? Like childhood trauma and stuff? Back to the human condition.
You'd have to look, you do some of that stuff, but they go through menus. Pick your background. We're doing that in Starfield. Hey, pick your background. What were you doing before this moment?
Can you pick your traumas and stuff? Like,
say,
that's a mod.
If you want to make a mod, you want to make a mod.
Thank you.
Go for that.
And then also make a mod for like a therapist.
But a lot of it, is in your head. So you're gonna do that. You're gonna pick this background. You do these things, and you're sort of like, this is who I was.
Yeah.
And we intentionally with Elder Scrolls kind of make it as much of a blank slate. Elder Scrolls is a little bit more of a blank slate game to who you are, which has a lot of positives. And Fallout for us has been more of a this was your life before. Here's who you were. Go be who you want to be, but this is the background. It's a little more strict.
Now, this might reveal something about me, and speaking of childhood trauma, but I feel like there's a lot of the meaningful experience of a role-playing game is not just the development of the character throughout the game, but the initial character creation, like you said. Is there something to that process that you found to be powerful? Like the design of that process.
Начало, то, как они начало делают, это прикольно. То есть прикольная идея, смысл имеет и несут.
How much should be defined? The interface itself?
Несут себе смысл, чтобы дальше продолжать.
Because I feel like that you're loading in, you start to load in the world that you're about to enter by creating that character.
Ну что могу сказать? Спасибо!
Yeah, we think about it a lot. It's a really
на Fallout 4 с модами.
Я не знаю, спасибо.
Comment and question. And it's more than, it has to set the whole stage. It has to pique your interest for the world you're going to enter. And we've done it so many different ways in terms of when you actually go to make your character, when you're making the choice. And one of the things over time that we've wanted to avoid is people starting over. So there's a lot of intentionality around the types of choices you have that can be undone or not undone. Because what game players want to is, I'll play it and then I'll make a new character. But sometimes they do that because they realize they made the wrong type of character. And as a designer, you don't want that to happen. So some people, when you get this comment in Elder Scrolls, like, oh, you simplified it. No. We moved those choices into the gameplay so that you don't, make this character in the beginning and then 8 hours later realize you make a horrible mistake. And so, okay, I'm going to start out like that. To me, is a really, really bad experience. So.
Also, like life. Yes, go.
But like life is okay. So you can then
fix it in game.
Right. I wish I had learned archery. Well, I'm going to start tomorrow.
Yeah.
So you can do that. Like the Skyrim character system, was really designed around that. All you pick is what's your race, and that gives you some things, but there's nothing you can't get then on your own. It sounds weird, but you mostly want that beginning character generation to be visual, which you then can also change in the game, and some starting skills that get you off to the type of play that you want, but if you discover you don't like that type of play, as you play, you can move your character along. So we have moved away post, Oblivion to a classless, meaning you don't have a strict character class, warrior, mage, thief, whatever, in our games.
And that's continuing for the. Are you like thinking of Elder Scrolls 6? You're already thinking about that kind of stuff. So you think of early on the like you said, the first few experiences in the game. You already think
историю.
Yeah.
Но это должен быть какой-то гейммастер динамичный.
We know what the character system is basically like, and
so tonally, what's the difference?
Я не знаю, посадить человека, который будет придумывать все на ходу, и оно будет каким-то образом
Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim, and Elder Scrolls 6.
То есть так проще за стол сесть и Dungeons & Dragons сыграть.
Yeah.
But Oblivion,
как запрограммировать?
That's when you could make spells and
stuff. Нейросеть.
You could do it in Morrowind as well. Oblivion has some more guardrails on it. Morrowind's where you can really go. And Daggerfall. And I don't remember if you can make spells in Arena. I think you can. Someone will correct me. You definitely can in Daggerfall. It gets crazy. Morrowind, you can somewhat. And then we start putting guardrails on it because people started breaking the game in certain ways.
Yeah. Why is it bad to break the game? Like, you always want it to be...
Well, there's like one people love in Morrowind where you could
То, что тот сказал по поводу начала, да, визуал ты делаешь. То есть, в принципе, то, как это в Disco Elysium было сделано, оно было сделано прикольно. То есть, можно было бы по-разному эту идею. То есть, ты как бы задаешь какой-то определенный, как он говорит, тон или тему, например, ты можешь выбирать для себя. Или, как вот Фридман сказал, что, мол, травмы какие-то определенные задаешь, которые, может быть, влияют на то, что, типа, тебя ждет. Или, например, в игре ты создаешь персонажа и, допустим, прописываешь какие-то слова, которые бы помогли понять, с чем ты будешь, например, на чем ты больше всего будешь фокусироваться и сталкиваться по прохождению игры. Наверное.
Call stones and
твои мысли, которые подсказывают. Да, из такого, из того, что выходило, Disco Elysium супер было сделано, мне понравилось.
And so as any quest, we would do this
они до сих пор
exercise of designing a
делают,
quest, and then someone would say, and then I recall away. Oh, okay, the quest is broken. So, and then one day someone says, can we just get rid of that spell effect? Everyone's like, yes, please. And so it allowed us to make better content.
So, a tangent upon a tangent upon a tangent. How do you create a compelling quest?
To visit every corner
there's
of
all
the
kinds of
game.
personalities of humans that play these games, right? Because I like the grind.
Well, there's multiple flavors of a compelling quest. Some of them have very good upfront storytelling. You just like the story and the NPC that's giving you this task, and you'll go through a more handcrafted experience that the designers have done a really good job.
То есть классы можно переосмыслить просто, типа основываться на этой идее, то, как сделали в Disco Elysium.
The ending has some multiple options that the player feels like they got to do something.
Я воин или я маг, можно что-то другое
придумать. But the best ones for me are actually where all of that was far more open-ended. The how I am going to accomplish this task is completely up to me, and I'm going to find some ingenious solution. This sounds very basic. It's going to sound quite cliche and silly. It's like, go find me 5 Daedric hearts or whatever. Like, find me X of something that's hard to get. It's a very simple set. You can give a simple story setup for that. And we're not telling the player where to get those. And they think, now, where could I get those? And I actually find those to be just as rewarding as the really handcrafted, well-done, a little bit more linear with an interesting choice at the end, if those objects are in the world in some, believable way, that there's usually some challenge at getting them.
How do you place objects in a world in an interesting way? Because it's a big part.
We have a level design. You cannot, if they only knew how much we spend on, we have a clutter group, a group of people who clutter. Like
What's clutter?
clutter
mean?
is all the stuff around. Just
To
like
place the
interior
stuff.
decorators
Yeah.
for treasure and stuff and trash, and they go through every space and they clutter it. Our level designers think about it a lot. These also become landmarks for the player when you're walking through a space and, oh, this is the place with
То есть
this.
есть
and there
отдельная,
is a-
типа, в моделинге работа насрана, получается, что ты просто срешь. Ну, вот сейчас вот Калиста я играл, там куча вот этого было детализации, типа, где просто насрано было всякими мелкими вещами и так далее, видимо, я знаю. Работа сундуков.
Logic
Interesting.
to making a good level, as they say, with even if you walk by like a little T intersection, that becomes like a
Получается
decision point
декорация,
in the
да.
player's head. Like, oh, I didn't go down that way. But the more you do that, it looks easy on paper, but when you're playing a game, you actually kind of want to limit those because he's trying to keep track of
Мне
all these
просто понравилось,
decision
он такой, ну,
points.
короче, есть люди,
then they
которые
get
кучу
lost.
мусора раскидывают, и
And
наши
yes, we have
левел-дизайнеры
maps, but anytime the player's
много
going to
думают об
check a
этом.
map in a place like that, I feel that it's more of like a backstop for certain players. If they need to check the map, I feel like we've kind of failed.
Got it. So it's just there's a
level,
a momentum to it. Just
level.
pulls them in. It
And you
doesn't
know,
feel
look,
like they're
you played a
required.
lot of games, you played a lot of levels where you're just like, I'm a little confused, or I don't
Наверное, это
know. And you play
затратно.
other
Ну,
levels
то
where
есть,
like, man,
я так и не понял, это левел-дизайнера или
was
команда
great, I went
художников,
through it,
или
it was
отдельная
well
команда
balanced, I knew
тех,
where I
кто
was
расставляет?
going.
Вроде отдельная команда,
And it's
которая
not,
расставляет.
you don't want to ever be mazy. As long as you know where you're going, as long as you know you
Пока
made
смотрим,
those
да.
choices, then it feels fine. But as far as the treasure and all of
типа
the
левел-дизайнер
loot,
этим называется. Бля.
it is really an art. We will not do enough clutter, and then we will over-clutter.
What a waste.
And then there's too much stuff everywhere, and then we declutter every single game. I wish we got better at it. It would save us a lot of time.
But you're constantly going by feel, like.
Да не,
this is
вполне
not-
молодо
too much,
выглядит.
it's not
Ну,
enough.
Right,
на
right.
50.
Because the other thing is, look, it creates. People want to pick everything up. They want to click everything. So if you have too many things of importance in a room, it's like it actually
okay,
makes you feel a little tight as a player. You're like, well, I'm basically an idiot if I don't pick all this stuff up.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
probably felt this way.
Yeah, for sure.
And like the moment where you decide that you're just like, I've clicked so many things in this room, I actually am going to leave that ammo canister there.
Yeah.
But you feel like a dope.
Yeah.
You've probably experienced this.
Yes,
Okay,
but
so-
also you have a joy from if there's not many items and you found the one and you got it
Right.
and you feel
блин,
good. I got
пиздец.
it.
And then it's finding like, oh, I stuck my head in this corner and, you know, I picked this lock and I opened this locker and, oh, there was this thing I've been waiting for.
Yeah. What about like rare items?
That's an art, even more so of an art. I will say that's an art for.
Yeah. What about like rare items?
That's an art, even more so of an art. I will say we have a ways to go there in terms of finding the right drop rate for special items, we call them, you know, your epic, rare, legendary. You look at games, like so many games do it, and there are ones that you just play and love because they have it down. You know, Destiny 2 is
да.
great
Я
at it.
проходил, мне
Diablo,
понравился. Недавно я
a series I
перепроходил.
love, you know, sort of
Науки
famously, Diablo 3, which I think
выпало.
is great. And they did an update and
Что-то я
mostly
Resident
just changed
Sleeper
the
словил.
loot drops. And it's like this whole new experience. And there's a really real art to it. I
Как
think
будто вся эта система
that
уже
we're
какая-то
still
устаревшая,
learning.
что ли.
We're
я не
still
знаю.
learning a lot and have to, we're trying to, you know, get better at it because it's one of those things where it drives you through the game. It's fun to get the
Acquisition.
treasure. And
Да, немного.
Diablo and Skyrim have this
Мне не
interesting-
понравилось, я что-то бегал, а потом я, короче, залез в инвентарь, и у меня мозг просто выключился, и я такой, блядь, что это за хуйня? И я пытался какую-то хуйню сделать, типа перекинуть вещи или что-то, и я сидел целый час, пытался инвентарь сделать просто 3 вещи каких-то, ну, то есть 3 действия. И я такой, мама дорогая, что я делаю нахуй? И офнул. Всё, просто настало.
quality of being extremely
Там еще
popular.
очень странно было, типа, начинается игра, ты нихуя по сути не делаешь, ты такой, ты избранный, окей. И потом тебе все хлопают по плечу, такие, ты избранный, спасибо тебе за все. Как будто я уже игру прошел. И типа рукопожатие, типа, там кажется, даже есть это рукопожатие. И я такой, окей, это странно, я же ничего не сделал, я просто был здесь, по сути. Ну, закрыл я там какой-то портал. И я такой, ладно. Ну да, а потом я в инвентарь залез, и все, пиздец, меня разъебало.
And there's a lore around,
просто вся игра
like, rare items. So it changes the dynamic of like.
Ну то есть, как будто вот я играю в игру, и она вот как будто меня вот просто сидит и каждую секунду говорит: ты тупой, ты тупой, ты тупой, ты тупой, ты тупой, тупой, ты тупой, ты тупняк, тупище, туп, 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 туп. Вот, и как-то, ну вот такое ощущение было. Да, это Inquisition.
Afford to have really rare items.
Yes.
And then somebody finds it, and that becomes like a thing. I mean, as you release a game, there's a lot of people play it, and they start sharing stories.
Да, там, наверное, только на персонажей подвязаться можно было, но меня не зацепило. Я решил забить, не продолжать.
Because we've been classically, with most of our stuff, single player, that water cooler shared experience, we would have a thing like we call them "Did you know" moments. Like we gotta have a bunch. So you meet someone, they do, "What are you doing?" And then they say, "Did you know? If you go here and do this, what? Did you know?" And that to us is where a lot of our community.
Кому ну прокачиваешь? Да, они типа в начале там как раз, когда рукопожатие было, что-то стали говорить, и я такой, все, хватит с меня.
Not a single player game that's gigantic, that's
well, we did Fallout 76.
Я смотрел интервью Кармака.
We have Elder Scrolls Online, not a game I created, but look, that started as more classic MMO. Know the folks who are part of our company who made that game.
Yeah.
And it's insanely popular.
It is. Okay, so I should try it out.
They do some great storytelling, quests, like the actual mechanics aren't the same as Skyrim, but the world is awesome. They've just done an incredible job. You know, it's about to be 10 years for that game as well. And it's just, you know, great community around that.
Yeah, that's I haven't played there's a mobile Fallout game, right? I need to play that. I was thinking of playing Diablo mobile too.
I mean, you can debate the monetization, but I would not. I think they did it's really fun.
On Fallout, what's
Diablo?
Oh, I was thinking of playing Diablo mobile too.
I mean, you can debate the monetization, but I would not. I think they did it's really fun.
On Fallout, what's
Diablo?
Oh, Diablo.
Yeah, well, Fallout. I definitely recommend that one. Fallout Shelter, completely different game.
Yeah.
Diablo Immortal is. I was very, very impressed with that. I had a lot of fun.
On the mobile.
Yep.
What's the challenge of designing a game for mobile versus the PC and
Что такое было, да, во второй?
Well, obviously the screen size, right?
Is that what you feel first?
What's the? Как же тот продает игры? Fallout Shelter упомянул.
In the philosophy of design. Does it constrain? Does it change the tone of the game?
Больше про Elder Scrolls.
Well, we've done a few things, and we have a new mobile game that we're working on that we haven't announced yet that I'm in love with.
Он сказал, что можно, типа, там, говорить о монетизации, все такое, Диабло, мобильный Диабло, но, типа, ему понравилось, типа, фаново был.
Approach on mobile. Now, I can give you sort of the classic mobile gaming thing and then what we do. You know, a classic mobile gaming is really for short play sessions. Because for the amount of people you're going to get, the number that have the amount of time to sit there for a long time and play it, like a console game or a PC game, is lower because people are playing mobile games on the move or whatever. And how it onboards you, because obviously most of them are free. So how the tutorial works, how it gets you into the game, because you haven't bought it, you haven't done this investment of buying it and then saying, no, I'm going to learn it. People don't care. So really understanding how they get into the game. Those two things are really the magic to mobile gaming. We have found, though, with our games, you know, particularly Fallout Shelter, people will sit there for an hour or two. Like, they will just sit there and play it. Like, large numbers of people will play it for hours a day.
So there is a more, I don't know, addicting element to the mobile? Because I guess you can spend more time with it.
If you look at kids these days, they can stare at their phone for hours. That's all they do. That's where they watch everything. So it's also like a demographic thing. The younger audience they would rather sit and stare at their phone than play it on a big screen.
I would just love to sort of list out throughout human history the evolution of sentences that began with, if you look at kids these days.
It's true. It's true.
The kids of the kids these days will probably be talking about, be doing like virtual reality.
Like, I love mobile games, though. I play a ton of them. I am, like, my favorite game this year is Marvel Snap, this card game.
Ну, мой племянник, например, кстати, он, ну, когда совсем маленький был, да, он скорее телефон использовал, чтобы там что-то на ютубе смотреть. Потом, так как он пользовался телефоном, он, типа, играл в раннеры в основном, вроде то, что я помню. А потом он сказал, кстати, когда он подрос, он, типа, забил вообще на телефон, ему купили Switch, он просто Switch играл. И... Ну, и как я понял, там, типа, из его поколения все там, ну, Майнкрафтом интересуются или даже Роблоксом, по словам, но ему, типа, он сказал, неинтересно. Типа, он такой, ну, видимо, кал, у меня тут Switch. Я думал ему, типа, дарить этот Dark Souls или... Astral Chain, я решил ему Astral Chain подарить, но ему вроде зашло.
From the folks who did Hearthstone, you should really play it. If you like, do you like card games?
Yeah.
Do you like superheroes?
No.
It's genius. You don't like superheroes?
No, I don't like superheroes. I never understood. Listen, this is
Who
growing.
doesn't like
Я потому что,
growing
если
up
он
in
захочет
Soviet
Dark
Union.
Souls, наверное, он сам
What?
просто
I don't
обнаружит.
understand this. All right. Well, I don't understand. You're wearing a costume.
Сколько ему лет?
It's silly to me. I can't.
я
So you
забыл.
have to suspend.
Ну, в районе 10 лет.
Like you have to be able to immerse yourself, and for some reason, there's something about costumes.
Costume.
Yeah, it doesn't get me. But then again, I'm like into elves and dragons, so I don't understand. And I'm
I
fine.
think I get it.
Yeah, but the rest, at least the
Сейчас
American
сборка
Western
модов
world is
1300. Спасибо.
even Batman, you have like little ears, but all right, that's fine.
Плохой дядя, не
Well,
помню.
back
Ну
to
да.
Elder Scrolls Starfield. So one thing I didn't ask you about, when you look at the timeline of 5, 6, 7, 8 years, whatever it is, to create a game, what's the role of the deadline internally, not publicly announced?
Keeps you honest.
Do you try to keep in your own brain a deadline, for the team a deadline?
Yeah, all the time.
На видео.
And
Не,
when you
не
set
смотрел
that
ничего
deadline
такого.
early in the development, do you try to set deadline like that's really tough to reach?
Дядя,
No,
где
we try to make it
проснулся?
like, hey, this is our best guess. If you make it tough to reach, it's sort of, you know, you're going to miss it. It's arbitrary.
Ну,
We
я думаю,
really
что
try to, you
большим
know, keep
толчком все-таки
ourselves
было
honest
то,
because
что
it will let
его
you know
отец,
where
ну,
you're
брат
at,
мой,
right? We want to have first
подарил
playable. We want to
Switch.
be done with prototyping or design by this
помогло.
date. We want to have first playable this date. We want to have this. But look, you know, things happen. Pandemic happens. People go home. It's throws everything off. Or
Тот говорит все еще.
you know what you needed to do, because we're not just like making a game and then moving everybody on. You know what you
С
need to
Quest
do.
and
Like
Items я,
Skyrim was
бля,
so
вообще
popular, we
запутался,
kept
о
people
чем
on
они
that
говорят.
game for longer. So it delayed a little bit. We were doing with Fallout 4 at the time because we can't. We're, you know,
Помогло.
hey,
Ну, в плане то, что он
we
типа
really
с
shouldn't
Switch'ом
move the people on
заинтересовался.
Fallout
Ну, не
yet because
мобильные
we're
игры.
doing these things in Skyrim, and we should. So it just sort of keeps you honest for where you're at.
Does it get super stressful as you get closer? You try to avoid announcing anything? Is there a
Про Соло
temptation to
мы уже
announce?
говорили,
Well, I've
да,
done it
кстати.
all ways,
Часть.
right? I've announced, you know, Starfield. We're pretty, you know, loud with a
Я колу
release
возьму
date
себе.
that we then.
Я офнул. Если я еще раз увижу говно в чате.
And had a delay. So,
Was that tough?
it was. But it was the right thing to do. And
How do you know it's the right thing? Like when you sat down and looked at it, like this is not ready.
it's not an exact science, but you can look at what needs to be done and the amount of time you have. And, we've done it in the past where we can get it done. We believe we can. And so you're fighting that personal belief that you can get something done. But there's a lot of things that go into release date with marketing and publishing. And, we've reached a point where on Starfield where it was pretty clear to us, even though you want to say you can get it done, that the risk involved with that to the fans, to the game, to the team, to the company, we're part of Xbox now, to everybody, was we should really move it and give it the time it needs.
So you mentioned part of Xbox. Microsoft bought Bethesda and ZeniMax for $7.5 billion.
А зачем им ZeniMax, если уже есть Microsoft? Хотя, наверное, это дочка, которая будет... Ну да, ладно.
Well, what's it like joining the Xbox team? You've I think written about it. What are the exciting aspects of that?
Это злая кола получается.
When your company goes through a change like that, no matter what it is, even if it's somebody that you've worked with for a long time, you never know what you're in for. You hope. And I had worked with them since we started doing console stuff with Morrowind. They came to me and, hey, you should make this game for the Xbox. And so when they were making that console, had a great experience with them. And then on the 360 with Oblivion. And so I guess the point is, we felt that we had a very good relationship with everybody there, and we understood what their culture was, but you never really know. And I mean this honestly, it's been awesome. That the culture inside of Microsoft and Xbox that people see from the outside is the culture inside, the way they talk about players, the way they'll invest in the players, the risks they'll take, the thoughtfulness from Phil Spencer on down has been, feel really, really lucky. And then a game like Starfield, where, look, we've had a lot of success with the games that you talked about, but we've never been kind of the platform seller, the game for a platform for a period of time. And so, there is a lot of pressure there. There's a lot of responsibility there to make sure we deliver for everybody.
Is there a chance that Starfield is exclusive to Xbox?
It is exclusive.
It's officially
Xbox,
ready.
PC. Yep. Yes.
So you're... I get it. So extra pressure, also creating a new world.
Yeah, it's new, but keep in mind, for us, that exclusivity is not unique, even though we've done PlayStation stuff, and I think the PlayStation 5 is just an insane machine. They've done a great job, and we've had great success on PlayStation.
Вроде кола
We
продается
were
просто в небольших
traditionally a
магазинах, насколько я
PC
слышал. Даже в
developers
Москве.
in the beginning.
В Москве уже
We
и польскую
transitioned to
колу продают,
Xbox,
это, видимо,
became
из
our main
Калининграда везут.
platform. Like Morrowind's basically exclusive to Xbox. Oblivion was exclusive to Xbox for a long period of time. Skyrim DLC was exclusive. So we've done a lot of, our initial stuff is all Xbox. So we get into development and saying we're focused on Xbox, and it's not abnormal for us in any way. It's been kind of the norm. And from a development side, I like the ability to focus. So our ability to focus and
Какие-то
say,
маски.
and have help from them.
Кажется,
You
из
know, the
The
top
Elder Scrolls
engineers
что-то
at
такое.
Xbox to say, we are going to make this
Не вид.
look
Ну, вид
incredible
это понятно.
on the new systems is like, from my standpoint, it's just awesome.
What's the difference in creating the console versus the PC? I also have to admit, I've never. Is this shameful? Actually, you should recommend to me. I've never played Skyrim or any of the games you've created on Xbox.
Really?
Фоторобот из мемов, да,
I played. I mean, I played very little Xbox.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look, there's the obvious interface part between mouse and keyboard and then a controller. But when you're looking at hardware, PCs, it's tough, right? Because you're looking at, well, what are their driver versions? What kind of monitor do they have? What is the actual refresh rate of X, Y, and Z? We're used to it. But if, anyone will tell you, give me the hardware that I know I'm writing it for. You know this. And the Series X is just an incredible machine. And now
you know what it is. You know
what it is. And now that we're part of Xbox, getting, the people who built it to show you how to make it really, really dance it's just awesome.
Is there a case to be made? Did you get people that do both PC and Xbox that enjoy Xbox more? Like that, if they have a choice, that they enjoy it?
I think that depends on. And look, now that you can kind of you can take your save and go between and all those things.
You can?
Yeah.
Блин, вот знаете, я вот смотрел просто геймплей Unbound, Need for Speed нового. Меня так раздражает почему-то то, как сделано там освещение. То есть, типа, все прикольно, типа, графон, все дела. Но я не могу, вот именно, как будто бы машина, помимо того, что там есть такая мультяшная какая-то стилистика, вот эти, типа, всякие финтифлюшечки и так далее, это мне очень нравится. Но вот как будто бы машина — это один стиль, и мир — это вот как немного диссонанс напоминает, как вот Соника, вот Sonic Frontiers, вот что-то такое почему-то. Как будто вот не доработали именно окружение, то есть дорога, когда свет падает на дорогу, как будто вот все это как-то, блядь, не совпадает. И меня это прям корежит, я не могу.
Depends on if...
For which games? So for Skyrim?
If you have the Game Pass PC version of it versus Steam. Not via Steam right now. Not via Steam.
Got it. And so there's the Game Pass. So I'm like learning about this. So there's a Microsoft Game. So this is gonna be on Game Pass. And then you can, if you can take it from PC through Game Pass.
But I think it depends on like for me, like what's my physical mood? Do I want to lean back on a sofa?
Exactly.
Right? Like the actual physicality of it is what determines where I want to play. Do I want to be 2 feet from a thing right now? And sometimes I like that. I am more of a console player just because I sit on my PC at work all day. Like, I play a lot of video games. So when I get home and I want to play something else, like I am a sofa screen controller person.
Let me ask you a ridiculous question. So you've created some of the greatest games ever. I think there's the question would be, what's the best game of all time? All right. Just give me a second. Tetris. All right, yeah, that's interesting.
Have you read the book on Tetris?
Yeah, I'm sure there's an interesting story. The fact that there's a book about Tetris is fascinating. Is there a book about Mario? I would love to find out more, but I think I would put Skyrim.
I'll take that. Good answer.
At number 1 for me, which is tough, however you put it, because you could also make the case out of the Elder Scrolls series, like what do you actually value more? If you put Tetris and Super Mario up there, then like the credit goes to Morrowind maybe over Skyrim. I don't know where the biggest leaps are, but overall I think it's Skyrim. For you, if you're not allowed to pick any of the games you're involved with, what are some interesting candidates for you that are just games that
что-то интересненькое, то что-то рассказал здесь.
Inspired the world, impacted the world, shook the world in terms of what video games are able to do.
Well, first, I'm just sort of like hearing you say that you think Skyrim is the best game of all time is quite like, thank you. And it's, incredible thing to hear. And, when I think about... Well, I have a couple answers. There's ones that are like personal to me, Ultima 7 is probably.
Yeah, can you talk about Ultima? Like you said that as an inspiration. I've never crossed that world.
Well,
Which
it was.
what kind of game
не то,
is it?
что
It's a role-playing
просто
game.
ответа Тодда,
You know,
типа,
circa
окей.
1992, 93, 94, and Ultima Online, first, really visual online world in that way. But for me, that was a virtual fantasy world where I had, you could bake bread, you could pick all this stuff up. I mean, anyone who's played Ultimas and plays our stuff can see the kind of touchstones and callbacks to that or inspirations. And the other thing that I loved about Ultima was particularly they were all different,
Выключен, окей.
right? That they iterated and they weren't necessarily what I'll call a +1 sequel outside of Ultima 7 Part 2, clearly a +1 sequel, but they each had their own tone. I love like the boxes. It's something that we get into as well. I love this idea that a game also is this tangible thing.
Oh, when you buy it,
You buy, the cardboard boxes and the way they were designed, and Ultima 7 is black, and Ultima 8's the fiery gate, and
Ну, и сейчас меня поднадоел.
obviously-
Day in Life.
what is the variety from?
you've figured out a solution. Is there is there is an escape or to.
What is a perfectly productive day in the life of Todd Howard look like? So maybe not perfectly, but just like a perfectly average productive. What are you, a morning person, evening person? Is it chaos? Is it pretty regular?
I'm in
schedule?
a good flow right now. I'm still doing a lot of stuff. So there's things I'm like executive producing, and then Starfield I'm directing. So I sort of view that as that's an everyday thing. Fortunately, I get to do a lot of stuff, from look at the TV show we're making, and this Indiana Jones game that's being developed at Machine Games, so we have to look at that. But the best really day or where I feel it's fulfilling is get to play some of the game, we'll say Starfield, get to play some of Starfield, look at the problem set of what it is doing, and then get in a room with the other developers that I work closely with, and we solve that problem together. So that's the most rewarding thing, when you can say, okay, what do we want this to do? What's the real player experience we want? What are all the pieces in front of us? Where the actual tangible pieces, as opposed to the beginning, the pie in the sky part is always fun. But it's like anything is possible, that's fun, but it's not rewarding in the same way because you haven't solved something, whereas these are the elements you have to play with. How do we make this all work together? And you come out of it at the end of the day like, now that feels great.
Все получится.
So brainstorming about specific big picture, both big picture and very specific detail of a game that's not working, something's not working, you want to fix it, that kind of stuff.
Можно будет
Because you
сделать
feel like,
вывод.
okay, you've made tangible progress on the actual
подписки.
build of the game. Where something you played in the beginning of the
Я
day
немножечко
didn't feel great,
расслабился.
you've
Плюс
figured out a
доллар.
solution with a group of
Спасибо.
people. Like, it's always with a group. And then the next day you're like, yeah, that worked
Когда
out.
последний
Who's
раз,
on the team?
год
Is it
назад,
designers, engineers,
All the above.
artists, voice over
So
folks?
internal to the studio, it's a lot of programming, a lot of art. You have
Да просто
design,
эта мысль
breaks
постоянно
into some,
сидела, типа,
quest
получится,
design,
не получится.
writing, systems design, who are like doing all the treasure and the loot and the skill systems,
Yeah.
and then level design, is making
Да
the
нет, там
spaces
немного
like
денег.
those that you'll play through.
не суть.
Production is a
Главное,
big
чтобы
part
они
of it. The
заработали
producers who organize everything. Can't remember if I mentioned art. A lot of artists. QA staff as well. They're hugely valuable in saying, "Hey, we broke your game in these magical ways. What are you going to do about it?"
Is the loot
Сколько
design
нибудь
team
трех
still
там?
hiring? How do I apply? That seems like the most
Always.
fun job.
Always.
I mean, all of this seems
Всем,
like a
кто
super
уезжает.
fun
It is,
А
you
там
know what,
все
it's the
намного
best. Then
проще,
you have
короче.
audio,
Как и предполагалось, просто юрлицо
and
нужно.
It by far is the greatest
Другой
job you
стране.
could possibly have.
And
Then
so
if
with
you're
the-
into like technology, it's great. If you're into storytelling and creativity and art, it's great. And it's really the gaming, the combination of that.
And like I mentioned to you offline, I think of video games as, I mean, to me, has brought thousands of hours of happiness. And so when you're designing the game, whatever you're doing, you have a part to play in a thing that's going to bring like millions, hundreds of millions of hours of happiness to people. It's crazy, right?
It is, and I'm gonna play you saying that back to our team, because people forget. Your head's down, you're trying to solve these problems, and then you do forget how many people it touches. Like even tiny decisions you make, tiny little things you create. Yeah, it's weird. I wish there was a way to like I would notice things in a video game, and it's like, huh, okay. It feels good, but you don't get that signal. The creator doesn't get that signal. I wish they did. I guess you could get that signal by, why is Lex stuck in this room, like digging through the loot? We do now get a lot of good data on what the players are doing, enjoying and not. That kind of stuff. We know where they've been and where they've died and how long they play in certain sections, and we can sort of tell. Outside of people just telling us on forums or calling or other things, we can tell for some data where people are dropping off or having a, we can tell if there's a key frustration point. Do you ever think about making people feel like human feelings when they play? Like designing, like make them feel fear or excitement, anger, longing, loneliness with Starfield. All the above. Yeah, of course. The big one I like to say is the video games give you is pride. Outside of other, if you watch movies or things like that, like, but you never think like, look what I did. And that feeling of like accomplishment and pride in what you did or you overcame. You talked about going back to a game that like, those are real feelings of like accomplishment that I've felt in games that I've played. And when we get to see a player feel that, it's really, really special. The other one is there is an escape or to be someone else that's more powerful in our games that you aren't in real life, that gives you a confidence or a perspective. We're doing one next week, but we've done a number of Make-A-Wish visits. Kids who could wish for anything, and they want to come, and I want to see the next game and meet the creators and see how you do it. And they come with their family, and it is like the greatest thing that we do.
Не знаю, тут что-то уже мне как-то скучно.
Я принесла толстячка, чтобы его дядя видел, какой он у нас хороший мальчик.
Дядя?
Это сын Марии.
Твой сын?
И я хочу предложить Роману стать новым администратором.
Мне?
Думаю, воспоминания.
Воспоминания?
Я попросила его об одной услуге.
Услуги?
И даже нашла дочку.
Дочку?
Нет, хочу Лурдес.
Лурдес?
And it reminds you of like how important it is. And the other really awesome thing is that you can see like the family change by the end of the day. Like they didn't even realize what it meant to their child or what went into it. And it's just, that to me is like been involved with that foundation for a number of years.
Что-то есть в том, когда тебе что-то объясняют, и ты просто вопрос задаешь.
Reminder of how lucky we are.
Просто или повторяешь тот же часть того, что тебе сказали, и в конце вопрос ставишь.
Yeah, where they don't, not everybody has it in the outlets that real life provides.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, the world is cruel when you're young. Nobody takes you seriously. You don't get like, that's why everybody always wants to grow up and get old as quickly as possible.
Мне немного показалось, что как будто бы Тодду нечего рассказать.
And then video games allow you,
что ли?
I mean, to build that sense of confidence, a sense of pride in something. That's why when people talk down to video games like it's a culture and so on, it's not, it misses out on that really deeply meaningful thing. Especially with
Мне
like
понравились,
single...
ну, то есть в целом вот этот кусок ничего было, там он даже матюкнулся, мне понравилось это. А так он как будто сдержанно, что ли, говорит, не знаю,
There's
как
some
объяснить.
darker aspects to multiplayer that people create
Вопросы,
communities and
да,
you know,
может
it
быть,
can,
тяжело
it
было
can
с
go off the
вопросами.
rails a bit, but the actual
Ну да.
experience of the game, especially one where you stick with for a while, that's really beautiful. Do you have advice for those same young folks?
Выкатывают доклад на
Given
каждом.
that your life is an interesting one.
Причем Кармак
Given
сам
what kind
мог, он как бы сам вел. И если вопрос неинтересный был, он как будто мог его сделать, типа, ответ интересным каким-то образом. Не знаю. Да.
Degree you got and being a legendary game designer. Do you have advice for young folks in high school, maybe college, how to have a career or a life they can be proud of?
Well, you have to find something that...
С Тоддом понятно. Не, он норм чел, видно, что он может компанией, то есть команда разработчиков управлять, под ним наверняка можно работать, и, видимо, будет окей. То есть ощущение, что как-то вот, как он объяснил, и как люди дополнили в чате, что они сидят такие, типа, прорабатывают миры, им интересно строить миры, там фантазируют туда-сюда, вот это они все проработали, сделали вот это начало, и все, и отдали. И потом он сидит, по сути, к нему кто-то приходит, говорит «да», «нет», и он говорит «нет» или «да», и все, в принципе. О, Кафо, спасибо большое за подписочки, спасибо огромное. Да, если кто-то сейчас подошел, Twitch мне ответили по поводу подписок, все можно, получится сделать, выводить их, если что. Сети-то продает, да. И как бы, то есть, и поэтому он часто вот про эту атмосферу говорит, про то, что там в мире, и какие-то такие вещи. Спасибо, Кафо. Спасибо огромное. Talent Sweet Little Lies, да. Спасибо огромное. Спасибо огромное.
That you love so much that it's never gonna feel like a job. And don't do it for money. Defines.
То есть он чисто, ну, такой босс. Ну, хз, насколько интересно на него, конечно, работать, потому что видно, что ты не совсем с ним будешь работать, и вообще не будешь с ним встречаться, скорее всего. То есть он где-то там наверху сидит, но при этом он типа шарит, что плюс. Twitch не забирает. Не-не-не, они просто заморожены все. Спасибо, Кавпав. Спасибо.
And what kind of degree you got and being a legendary game designer. Do you have advice for young folks in high school, maybe college, how to have a career or a life they can be proud of?
Well, you have to find something that you love so much that it's never going to feel like a job. And don't do it for money. Don't do it for... Find something you love, and the rest of it will come. It won't be a straight path. And do not ever underestimate yourself. It's going to take hard work. But
Не, ну нормальный совет. Альтку, спасибо большое. Спасибо огромное.
The worst thing... It's going to take hard work. But the worst thing that young people do is think they can't accomplish something, or they underestimate themselves. And maybe those first few times through where they do fail, if they love it enough, they're going to be resilient and push past that. Anyone who's had success or gotten somewhere, it's been, they've had those times, right? And they've stayed resilient because they love it so much that this is what they want to do. When you do it for other reasons, I just don't think it's going to work out the same.
Did you have low points?
Don't think it's going to what they want to do. When you do it for other reasons, I just don't think it's going to work out the same.
Did you have low points?
Нормально.
In your life, dark points, where your mind went to a dark place, whether it's struggling to get a job at Bethesda Softworks, or maybe with a Red Guard flop, or where you kind of start to doubt yourself, or any of that?
Well, I think what's weird looking back, I was so I was always so like in love with doing this that I didn't view them as like dark per se. Looking back, I was like, oh, I just wanted to, okay, let me find a way to make this work.
Even when it's hard and it's failing and all that kind of stuff, you just kind of like, yeah, it's a problem before you to solve.
Yeah, you know, when I started Bethesda, I don't know, my father had moved nearby to the office. I was moving, and you know, I slept on a sofa. Like, I didn't care. Like, I don't need a bedroom. I'll sleep on the sofa and work there. That's all I want to do. When the company almost went out of business, it was, well, I hope it doesn't. I feel somewhat responsible, but hey, that's a learning lesson. Let's go. I think I was pretty resilient to it all. Fallout 76, like, really bad launch. And okay, what did we do wrong? What can we learn? Let's go at it. Now it's a...
Бля, это первый раз, кажется, когда он упомянул Fallout 76, да?
Now it's a success. But those kind of ups and downs for the length of developments that we have, you know, people don't see them, but we have them, you know, all the time. And so it's that sort of belief that, you know, with the team having done it time and time again, to know that, nah, we're gonna make it as good as we possibly can. And whatever we're experiencing now, when we solve it and we get it out.
Ну, я так скажу, учитывая, что он такого типа босс, как описал, что там да, нет и все такое, клево, надеюсь, что они понимают, что это было странновато, ну, типа, не стоит так делать больше. Хотя бы, просто не то, что все так говорят. Некоторые либо замалчиваются, либо говорят что-то в стиле, ну, игроки виноваты, или пуксреньк АИ, ну, какая-нибудь такая хрень, хз.
And, you know, we see the millions of people who love it, it's all worth it.
And you're getting into new spaces. First of all, new worlds with Starfield, but also new, I saw the TV show you're working on, on Fallout. With Amazon, what's that like? Worlds that you created in the digital realm.
Да, я думаю, задачу придумали.
On the screen.
Yeah, people asked, you know, I can remember 10 years ago after Fallout 3 was a hit, you know, the movie producers coming and, hey, we think this make a great movie.
Говорили, ну да.
And taking a lot of meetings, and I think, you know, most people would jump at that. Like, sweet. And I sort of paused and like, I don't know. What is this going to do? I felt like they're gonna like synthesize. I met great people, like well-known creatives. Like, you know, it's gonna get synthesized into this 2-hour. I don't know. I'm not seeing the great thing here yet. So, you know, I think the advent of television, in terms of what it's become, you know, nowadays with big budget TV series, it kind of came up again and met with people, and Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, who do Westworld, and I always. Love the work he did writing Interstellar and the dark movies. I just love.
Wait, Jonathan Nolan is involved with this?
Yeah, he's the EP and directed the first.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, this is awesome.
And he's the EP. He's directed the first few episodes. And when I connected with him, Jonah was like, "Hey, you know, you're the person I want to do this." So I met with people, kept saying like, you know, just let me see if he wants to do it. And to my joy, he was like, oh yeah, Fallout 3 is one of my, sign me up. It was like, no, how do we get this done? And at that time, he was at HBO, and it was, you know, we were trying to figure out, put a little pause on it. You know, got to visit the sets, reading scripts and things like that. It's all new to me. But they're doing such an incredible job. Like, I think if you like this world, you are going to be just blown away. Keep in mind, I've never made a TV show. Right. You know, those are all the best. You know, no one ever does it wanting it to not be great. But they've just done their attention to detail and just obsessive with what's on the screen and the storytelling and how it looks. The whole thing.
Yeah, I think obsession is really a prerequisite for greatness. What they did, HBO did with Chernobyl, Like the
Great
attention to
series.
detail is just
And
incredible.
he's doing The Last of Us.
Бля, Чернобыль разъёб.
Showrunner.
If you really care and you really put a lot of effort into the details, you can create something truly
I was
special.
stunned. I mean, I don't want to spoil it, but when people see it, I think you'll just be
Не
like,
знаю, честно, у меня с каждым месяцем уже отношение такое к играм, что они заебали, и все меньше хочется над ними, типа, работать. Ну, или там идти, там оставлять какую-то мотивацию, чтобы что-то делать. Уже просто заебали, честно. Ну, и в плане инструментов, которые есть, и тому, что тебе нужно учиться и так далее, уже прям...
like wow. It's the other thing we're approaching it is very different. Where when it was people would say want to make a movie, they wanted to tell the story of Fallout 3 or then tell the story of Fallout 4. And for this, it was, hey, let's do something that exists in the world of Fallout. It's not retelling a game story. It's basically an area of the map, and like, let's tell a story here that fits in the world that we have built, doesn't break any of the rules, can reference things in the games, but isn't a retelling of the games that exists in the same world, but is its own unique thing. So it adds to it, while also people who haven't played the games, who can't experience like how crazy cool Fallout is, can watch the series. And so
Are there some similarities or interesting differences between the creation of a game and a TV show that you notice from the sort of story perspective?
Well, for them, it's much more character driven. Like, you can do all these things with the world and stuff that we already have. It's the main characters, who they are, what their motivations are, that really is the engine.
Right, there's no...
finding the right actors to do those, yeah.
Because there's no interaction. There's no, you don't get to enter that world. They have to do the work for you. The NPCs run the show. Yeah, I can't wait to see how it turns out. You also mentioned Indiana Jones. That's a different one. How do you work with a famous protagonist? Like, when the character is known, how do you work with that?
Well, it's different. Like, Indiana Jones is different, where like the name it's Indiana Jones, not a world. It's him, right? You can talk about the world of Indiana Jones, but at the end of the day, it's about
Там
this
будет
character.
Meaning of Life
And
еще.
Raiders still my favorite
жизни.
movie of all time. No debate. It's the best movie ever.
Best movie ever.
Ever.
Жирновато, да.
On a tangent, what do you love about it?
Well, I saw it obviously when I was younger, and I believed it.
Это все-таки подкасты.
This happened.
И в подкастах просто у меня было... То есть, там в подкастах надо расслабиться, что ли, я не знаю, как объяснить, чтобы оно не воспринималось как интервью. Хотя здесь интервью, естественно, он задает вопросы.
I found the arc. I literally, I could not believe that they found it.
Расслабленным оказалось.
And I have found over my life, it's still really watchable every time. I enjoy it every single time.
Что из интервью подчеркнул?
Love the character,
то, что тот шарит,
the opening is the
наверняка
greatest
может
movie opening
управлять
ever.
командами.
And I just love
Под
everything.
ним, наверное, интересно работать.
What was the opening? Is this when the...
What? It's the temple, and then the ball rolls and
того.
tries to crush him.
Oh, that's the opening.
That's the opening of Raiders. Yeah, he steals the idol.
I think you're deeply offended.
It's like, what's the opening of Raiders? So I've always wanted to. It's one of those things like, what's on your bucket list? Like, oh, I want to make an Indiana Jones game. And I had pitched Lucas. I had met some people there and pitched them back in 2009. This Indiana Jones game concept. And they wanted to publish. It's kind of the deal fell apart. They wanted to publish it, and we were a publisher, and so we didn't do it. And I didn't really have the team to do it. I just was going to figure that out after we agreed to a deal. And, well, we made Skyrim, so it worked out. And then,
то есть,
fast
если
forward,
идти, условно, наверное,
10 years
Bethesda
plus,
работать,
and,
видимо, скорее всего, это будет
Lucas,
окей.
now part of Disney, and they're doing a lot more of licensing and working with people. And so I knew some folks there and said, I have this idea that I pitched a long time ago. And they loved it. And again, the internal team that I had not only didn't have the time, they
Десятки
probably
народов.
weren't as
Ну, выглядит
good a
так,
fit
что там
as
можно было
Machine
чем-то
Games,
заняться
who's
интересно.
done the Wolfenstein series, who is the perfect fit for this game with storytelling and how they record it. And it's awesome. They're just doing an incredible job with that game. People are going to be, if you like Indiana Jones, it is a definite
они с
love letter
Microsoft давно
to
работают, так что
Indiana
я думаю, всё
Jones
окей.
and everything with it.
Can you say if it's more on the action adventure like side, like the actual experience of the game?
I could go back. I would just say it is a mashup. It is a unique. It isn't one thing intentionally. So it does a lot of different
Ну, у меня
things.
по Starfield'у просто
that,
ощущение
you
такое,
know,
что,
we,
знаете, это больше
myself
игра
and-
будет для тех,
and
качественная
Yurik
игра
and the
сделана
folks
для
at
тех,
Machine
кто
Games
любит
have wanted to
гулять,
do in a
что-то
game, so
крафтить,
it's-
собирать там, вот
it's
это
a
всё.
unique thing.
Что-то
Before I
такое.
forget, who do I?
Не то чтобы там
How
какие-то
many
задачи
humans do I have to
решать,
kill? I mean, dragons do I have to kill
или
to get
попадать в
myself
какие-то
somehow
неудобные
into,
ситуации, с которой тебе
Elder
нужно
Scrolls
вылезти.
6. So mod, if anyone wants to create
Будет как
mods
песочница.
of
Да, вот
me,
у меня... И
is
вот
that
те люди,
possible?
которые вот
Yeah,
что-то
that's
подобное
possible.
любят и находят в каких-нибудь
while
играх типа
maintaining
Assassin's
realism
Creed
somehow.
последнего, им типа,
don't want-
бля, они
you don't
просто
want a person
охуеют
that
от этого
says
Starfield.
die.
У меня такое ощущение.
doesn't make
You put you in
sense.
both. Put you in Fallout. You can
Но
wear
это
that.
не по мне,
Yeah,
ну, лично у меня.
Please put me. So Fallout, there's also a culture of.
You do a mod where you replace the mysterious stranger.
There you go. That's a to-do task, and
Top mod right there.
and you will have my deep gratitude and more, dear stranger, for doing so.
Ну, почему в
What's the
Fallout можно
programming
было
language for
ролплей
mods? Or is
исполнять?
it mostly?
They use our internal scripting language that's built into the tool.
Okay, I'm almost afraid to explore that world
Говард
because you will
Дешоре.
never turn back.
Если
How
спрашивают, то, наверное,
long?
не попал.
You've created so many incredible games. Is there what does the future hold? Is there sort of going through this process? Do you still have the energy, the passion, the drive to
I
keep
do.
creating?
I
Автоматически
cannot
субтитры, да.
imagine doing anything
С
else.
переводом.
I'd like to do it as long as possible. I will say though, as I've done it, soon it'll be 30 years at Bethesda. I've learned that to appreciate the developments a little bit more, that the time it takes, I should prioritize all of us enjoying the development process more than I did in the
Я,
past.
кстати, что вспомнил. Блин, какой был прикольный у Fallout анонс 4-го. По сути, это был анонс в стиле «Привет, мы делаем Fallout 4, он выходит через пару месяцев». Вот, это было прикольно.
It was like, just wanted the end. That's all that mattered.
Yeah.
And the more you do it, you realize, no, I'm spending the majority of my life in Tamriel and the Wasteland and Fallout. So, the moments that we're all doing this together, we need to enjoy it. Like, it's a lot of work finishing Starfield, but hey, we got to enjoy this. This is like incredible. We don't get that many shots.
So the actual process of creating the struggles along the way of stuff not working, like you said, at this point with Starfield, probably creating some of the glue of how stuff feels and going back again and again and again to try to make the beginning better, all that kind of stuff.
And I would say it for anybody's vocation, whatever you're doing. Whatever people do, you're going to have harder times. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people, you have to, maybe recalibrate yourself to like, okay, how can we make this more enjoyable for all of us, no matter what you're doing, and rewarding?
So if life is a video game, which it most likely is, what do you think is the meaning of life? From having created so many games, or the character has to try to figure out. I mean, there's bigger questions than just solving the quest. You're asking the big questions of why am I here? I feel like that's good practice for answering the same question for this video game we're in. What do you think is the meaning of life, Todd Howard?
That's a very... I can say what motivates me.
That's a good start.
Having a curiosity, the ability to not assume a lot, and be curious about the world around you. It's more, it's, you know, not the same as just wanting to learn everything, but what makes other humans tick? How do they feel? How do they love? It might be cliche to say the meaning of life is to love, right?
So that curiosity is about noticing the world.
Noticing the world around you. You know, look, there's so much anecdote. Someone says, everybody has 2 lives. And the second one starts when you realize there's only one. And I think I usually preach to my children and everything else, like, have a curiosity to the world around you, and you'll have the most fulfilling days.
Are you able to be inside the worlds that you've created and be able to notice them? Like really enjoy them?
It takes time. So like Skyrim had its 10th anniversary. And so when I went back into it, I think I got to see it for what it is. My younger son got really into it, a few years back on the Switch. That's what we noticed. People age up into it. Right. So one of the reasons it's so popular is, so people come into, they're now becoming, teenagers, and, okay, I'll finally play Skyrim. And, he got obsessed with it. And he wasn't, usually I'd say, hey, check out my games. And he's like, shut up, Dad. We're playing this other stuff. And he got like obsessed with Skyrim. Like, we're having like deep Elder Scrolls lore conversations at dinner. And, I saw it through his eyes, and that was pretty special. And then the mods he was downloading, the YouTubers he was following, talking about stuff. So the people who like the Elder Scrolls people don't realize how much of that I have watched with my son.
Yeah.
And then I kind of, when the 10th anniversary came out, like, I'm going to, check out a build. I have to check the build out, but I hadn't played it in so long. And it was like, it has this flow. We're like, oh my God, I just played for 4 hours. I need to turn it off.
Yeah, I mean, there's something about enjoying video games with the people you love too, or the water cooler discussion, and with kids. So I would love to have kids, and hopefully soon in the future. So I guess the thing I need your advice on is, how do I time it in such a way when they're old enough, right at the age they're old enough, like I want to know when to have them, so that when they're old enough, that's exactly when Elder Scrolls 6 comes out. So can you give me a hint when I should have kids? All right, never mind.
You are a genius at how to ask that question.
The number of times. You told the anecdote that your son asked you the same question. But of course, it's all for good fun. Take as much time as is needed. It's Skyrim is still an incredible game, and has an impact on millions of people as do all of your games. It's thank you for everything you've done for the world.
Thank you.
And it's a huge honor that you would talk with me.
This has been an honor, and it has to be said. Look, I have a huge team of people I've worked with for some of them for 20 years, and it's really all of us together.
Keep doing a great job. Guys and gals, I can't wait to see what you create next. It really, really does have an impact on silly kids like me, and millions of silly kids like me. So I really appreciate everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for listening.
То есть видно было, что с Кармаком, когда он общался, он там что-то знал про внутреннюю кухню у id, и какие-то такие вопросы задавал, и было прикольно послушать Кармака, а здесь вот, например, с Тоддом такого не было. Вот. Мог бы спросить, как у них там шло с Моровиндом, по поводу идей, какие-то такие, да, очень поверхностно, да. Да, тут какие-то некоторые философственные, еще что-то было. Ну, короче, нормально, пойдет. Пойдет. Ну, куда пойдет?
Blink once.
Да, короче, перед тем, как запустить стрим, я скачал Godot, пытался понять, как там поставить штуку. Level Editor вроде бы они сделали. Только вот я не понимаю, можно ли строить как в Хаммере, который типа вышел после квейковского, короче, на квейковских инструментах основывался. Я нихуя не понял, если честно. Как с ним здесь что работать? Да? Ну, короче, да. Да похуй вообще. Нет, это не стрим программирования, если что, ребят. Тренч-бруме. Какой-то отдельный проги, получается, нужно строить. Так. Такусики. Такусики. Сусики. Такусики и сусики. Сусики, такусики. Механики, которые добавят... Да не, это не проблема. Говорю, проблема в том, что начать сесть работать к этому, когда ты придешь, и это, блядь, ебануться можно. То есть как настроить?
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's Mike here at Game From Scratch, and today we are talking about. All right, Godot is now an run it in the Godot game, releasing project. So that.
То есть ты отдельно используешь тренч-брум, это да. Окей, сохраним, спасибо. Кто-то ковырялся в Годоте, если там что-то использовать с физикой связано, коллизии и прочее, всю эту хрень, как оно по сравнению с Unity? Как тебе сайкл? Сейчас бытовок есть, что, все, мы отходим от интервью Тодда Говарда потихоньку. Хорошо работает. Какой аук? Хороший вопрос. Жожа пока не смотрел. Библиотека Bullet в третьем была? Они свою пишут. Неплохо, нормально. Неплохо.